And they're like, I don't. Sure.
Okay. Welcome. We're here. It's March 27th. We are about to start what I believe is our 5th negotiating session. And I realized that I adopted a classroom habit where I would always end my lessons with shout outs and thank yous. And I've been bringing it here. So I'm just going to keep it going. I want to give a shout out to our union siblings in the Cornell Graduate Students Union, who just announced this week that they have a tentative agreement on their first contract, and they are celebrating a win on a 7.98% salary raise in year one, which is pretty spectacular for the graduate students at Cornell. And I also want to give a thank you, Dr. Brown. I wanted to thank you. I have, over the past few weeks, been hearing from a lot of ESPs asking, what's going on with our contract? Dr. Brown says it's a done deal. So I want to acknowledge and thank you for acknowledging that it's not a done deal yet, that it's very close. There's a tentative agreement, but that we haven't ratified yet, so it's not officially done. And any shout outs or thank yous from the other side? Okay. So just for people in the room who are joining us for the first time, hopefully you've signed in and acknowledged the rules of the room with Jake over here, who's given a little wave. We have our notes runners for today are Elise and Jen. So if you have a note, please get it to them. And our transcriptionists taking as close to accurate word for word notes as they can. We have Molly and Nancy will be joining Carrie and Gretchen, who are working on that transcript together and who will get that in for summary and all of that as we go. And today we are starting with continuing salary conversation, and the ICSD has a counter proposal to present.
Yes, we do. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I guess I do have a shout out, and my shout out is to Brian over there on the front row, who's, as folks know, is an outstanding teacher. And I've had an opportunity to be in his classroom quite a few times over the years. And you always ask great questions. And you asked me a question earlier that still has me thinking. He said, how many of these sessions have you done? And I was quickly trying to come up with a number, and I was thinking about all the ITA negotiations and then the other collective bargaining. So I'm getting close to 100, Brian. And reflecting on that number and then reflecting on these sessions, I must say, shout out to all the folks in the room and to you all for your leadership. This has been one of the most intellectually stimulating ones, if I could say that, because it's pushed us to think. And it also has pushed me and us to think about how we are reflecting on our own thinking and how we, as Brian reminds the students, how we are hearing and listening to the conversation. And I wish to start there and underscoring that we hear you and we are listening. And I hope and I know that you hear and listen to us. And these sessions have always, those close to 100 sessions have always been fun because, as I was saying to one of our board members, I enjoy the conversations. I have yet to do one of these where everybody got what they wanted, but they've always ended with us all agreeing. And the ways in which we do that has been most important. And dare I say, and I've said it, the ways in which we do it that's loving, forgiving, patient, truthful, committed. So I wish to, one, thank you again, Brian, for having me reflect as you do the young people you've been doing. He's been teaching all day, and then he came in here and helped an adult reflect and think. So thank you. And our proposals this evening, I hope you see reflected in the ways in which we've been thinking and hearing from you. We've heard your wishes to have an approach and a salary structure and a compensation package that is predictable. Our definition of predictability we want to talk about today and how our proposal is going to meet that need. We hear from you that you wish for a proposal and a compensation package that will take care of something I think we all agreed on the last time was unintended or maybe unintended consequence, yet a consequence that we want to correct, this notion of leapfrogging. And tonight I want to make sure we have a common understanding of what that term means, because I'm hearing that in my community too. It's a new term for a lot. When I said it to my kids who are teenagers and then my 2-year-old, leapfrogging, they wanted to play a game. All right. So I want to make sure we define what leapfrogging means in this organization when it comes to compensation. So leapfrogging, predictability, and then retention. Our efforts to retain and recruit and attract folks new to our industry and our profession, and then the folks who are in their mid and late careers. Again, we heard those requests, and our proposal, while you may not like or agree with all of it, I hope you see representing some of those requests. And so, and I'm gonna be asking pretty much everybody on our team to help me with this proposal presentation this evening at some point. But maybe we just start right in. Zach, can we pull it up first? And as part of our presentation to you, our revised proposals and an additional proposal or modification, we want to provide some additional background that sort of supports our thinking and why we think it's predictable, taking care of leapfrogging, and also in an effort to recruit, attract, and retain. So there it is. All right. I was like, I don't have much more filibustering I could do there, Zach. So I was hoping you would get this thing going. All right. So Zach, maybe you start with a few things and I'll jump in, and then we have Dom, Mary, and Bob.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Oh, I have to Windows K. There we go. Let me put it up on our main screen as well.
Do you have these slides printed? I'm like a print person and like to take notes next to the
We
information.
can, we're happy to send them over to you afterwards.
Okay.
But
We don't have them
we
right
don't
now.
have them printed right here. We're really digital these days. So, but that's, all right. So what we wanted to do is take a couple of minutes and sort of present out, as we listen to all the folks that, teach in our classrooms every day, come up and tell their stories. We want to take just sort of frame the things that we're thinking about right now. So to get, just this here slide shows us sort of the baseline information for the ITA as a group. What we know is that probably actually sometime in February, we had 576 FTE, meaning folks that we were in our organization, showing up, working in our schools every day. That group combined for roughly a $38.4 million in salary. To be specific, that doesn't include benefits and sort of any of the benefits. So when we talk about our conversation with you all, we're actually just talking about purely base salary. If we were to include the additional benefits, that number goes up millions and millions and millions. And we're happy to do a presentation on that healthcare presentation, but that's not today. So the average experience of a teacher in our district, it's 10.2 years versus the median of 7. The teacher in me just wants to take a moment just to remind everyone, the average includes, we take everyone divide it by the number of people we're including, that's our average. The median is we split them into 2 groups and we find the middle. Did I get that right? Any math teachers here? Yes, thanks. Okay, cool. Same thing for the average base salary and median salary as well. So that's sort of what we're looking at now. And what that tells you when the median is lower than the average is there's more folks in the earlier career group. So we'll talk more. Mistake here already. I apologize. It's proposal number 2. I'll modify that. What we'll be looking at in proposal number 2 later today is our effort to adjust the average salary for all of our teachers. And what you can see is the average salary for all of our teachers will increase from $67,000 roughly to about $80,000 over the 4-year window that proposal 2 gives you. Also, and we'll share this slide deck with you all, we also have, we showed you this last time, and I promise the math is correct, but we have a Lane and Longevity salary calculator tool that anyone is free to use, and we'll give it to you, but you can just simply put in your salary for our proposal. You can put in the number of years of service that you have as a member, and it will calculate out our proposal for you. So we want to make sure that everyone has this, and we'll give you a link and we will talk about that later.
And let's use it, again, predictability. So if folks wish to have some sense of what they could make over the next decade or more, you could use this tool to figure that out. And this is based on us just selling this current contract, right?
Yes. Yes. And make a couple things clear on this is we're projecting out the 4 years at 4%. And then we just put in a baseline of 2% because our historical data indicates that we haven't went under that.
I have a clarifying, I have a whole bunch of questions in general
Sure.
for afterwards, but a clarifying question right here, particularly, you have us calculating years of service in the ITA, but when a teacher comes in with a certain number of years of service, are we accounting for that? So like if someone comes in.
This calculator would, and we would calculate that for anyone that joins our organization. We'll talk more about this with proposal number 2, but longevities will accrue after you've completed your 5th year of service. So if you came in with 7 years of teaching experience already, after, you teach 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then on your 13th year, that longevity would hit. So that's how that's structured.
Okay. So this was built for proposal 2.
Yep, exactly. So one of the things that we also heard is that, and we showed this to you all last time, but we want to give you a chance to look at it and review this with everyone, make sure everyone sees it. We went ahead and looked at our neighboring, all the TST BOCES regional school districts, and we looked at, this is from, I believe, the last time New York State, the NICED salary data came out was, I think we're looking at 2023 still. But what you can see here are a couple key things. One, Ithaca is the 4th column over, and we employ about 500 plus, 550 teachers at that point. That's far more than any of our other districts, so that's an important thing to note. And then also, our salary falls right in the middle of all those groups. Again, not to say that obviously we're negotiating about that, but that's where we fall. So we just want to provide that for context in terms of the overall salary information. We took some time because we heard you all talking about steps in other districts, and we pulled the contracts for districts around us. And we went ahead and we looked at a teacher in the district here and we just pulled a scenario. If we had a teacher in our district here that currently is compensated at $61,000, that's a round number. So it's not a specific person. We gave them 1 year service credit coming in. They've taught here 7, they have 36 grad credits. And we looked at other schools around us and we came up with projections based on the contracts that they have and how they can be interpreted to see what they would get. Now, as you all know from looking at many of these contracts, there's a lot of other caveats in this, particularly things like how long is the school day? How many days are you teaching? So whenever we have these conversations, it's important that we always recognize that it's not always like, it's easy for the folks outside education to be like, here's our like for comparison, but we're just as a salary data point, here's our comparison tool of what we found for districts. Moving on. So one of the things that we also heard from everyone is the concern about leapfrog. So what our research indicates and what we think we're hearing from the ITA folks is that leapfrogging occurs when the salary of an employee with greater work experience and credit is passed by an employee with a lesser amount of work experience and credit. And so perhaps afterwards we can discuss this, but we want to come up with a common definition because, as Dr. Brown said, some folks think it's a playground game, and other folks think it has to do with salaries and where it goes. So we would love to have a conversation about that later with folks about what that all means to you. But this is our understanding of what that means.
Do you want us to answer that?
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
And then, so we did want to take a few times, and I'll say from the HR side, to talk about new hires. And what we do see is things that we're seeing right now is a staff member, and I put this on a grid just to show a staff member that's been here with 6 years, as it says in this slide, obviously isn't going to be on the salary grid. But things that we're seeing right now is that someone might be making, staff member B might be making, $58,000, and then someone new comes in and they're making $59,000. And what we're seeing fairly frequently is folks coming in with either many more years experience, and they're coming in with 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years of experience, so they're moving down, or we're seeing folks coming in with many credits. And so that does, certainly when we look at some of the data, it does show that they will have a greater salary than someone who has taught here from 4, 5, 6, 7 years, but does not have as many grad credits or doesn't have that amount of experience. So that we have noticed that does occur. So again, that's something, if that's part of your definition, it's something that we can certainly talk about later on.
Thanks, Zach. One of the things that has come up in the conversation is the budget and the budget consideration. So I wanted to address some of the issues that were brought up earlier and kind of talk about how these considerations could have implications globally at ICSD. So the first thing that has come up on a number of occasions is the state aid. And although we certainly are thrilled that our state aid increased this year, and one of the issues that had some implications on that was our building aid. That's, unfortunately, it's a bit of a moving target. And I think we've talked about this before and how building aid is calculated. And so while we saw about a $2.7 million increase in foundation aid, which was fantastic, our building aid was impacted by a number of factors. It could be because our projects weren't completed yet, or we haven't filed for our funds related to those projects, and that can change. So by April, we might see a calculation change there. So that's something to keep in mind. What we don't know, though, with in terms of the state aid, is whether or not the new formula has played into this. Obviously, something has, because we've seen an increase. We don't know how that will look in the next several years. So that's something that we're considering and thinking about. Will it increase? Possibly. We're not sure. Could it stay flat? Possibly. It's unlikely to decrease. We acquiesce to that. That certainly makes sense. So that's one of the areas I wanted to address. The second thing that has come up is our fund balance and reserve use. And the ST3 has been mentioned. And I want to provide some clarity around what the ST3 is. Folks may not understand that fully. The ST3 is another way that we're audited financially by the state. That's the state's way of looking at our financials. It's a report we provide annually, and it sort of gives the comptroller in New York State an idea. And it's also publicly available of what we're doing with our finances. And so one of the things it showed in the ST3 is that we've used this similar number, about $7 to $8 million in reserves and fund balance to help support the budget over the past 3 years. And what it looks like is that those funds, and effectively those funds have been rolled over as part of the budget. And essentially refunded. So we've used them in the budget, and then because our revenue was great, or our budgeting was done very well, that's been replenished year after year. And that's great as well. That's great planning. There are factors, though, particularly this year, because last year the budget went down, as we all know. This year, there are factors, both internal and external, that we're, I wouldn't say concerned, but they're things that we need to think about. And so one of those is, and this isn't news to anyone, the situation with the federal government and our federal aid. We don't know what will happen with that. And for ICSD, that number right now in federal aid is between $5 and $6 million that we receive. In a perfect world, if something were to occur, the state would make us whole. Again, those are things that we don't know. That's one of the factors. The other concern that we have is our interest on our investments. They've been fantastic. I will say that our investments have done very well. In the current climate, though, those are difficult to project out for the next 2 to 3 years. So that's again, a consideration. We have an RFP that I'm sure will be discussed more down the road at ICSD, looking at what the district might look like. What's our vision for the future? What are our efficiencies? What's our strategic plan? All of those areas are being looked at, and what sort of implications that might have on the budget in 2 to 3 years. We haven't filled a number of vacant positions. That's another concern or consideration. So one of the reasons why that pool of money, that the reserves and fund balance have kind of carried over, is because those positions haven't been filled. I would assume those are things that we're going to continue to look at, and we may fill them. But again, that's one of the reasons why those funds are there. There are also taxpayer implications. So this year we held, what we're proposing is to stay at the tax cap. The tax cap can change next year. It may be lower. We're not sure, but this year it's about 3.75, 3.76%. Just some simple math, and this is oversimplified. I will simply say that now. But if we're looking at state aid at about 3.3% as an increase, and we're also looking at a tax cap of 3.76%, those are the increases in our 2 largest areas of revenue at 3 to 4%. The concern, very basic level, that we have is that we don't want the revenue outpaced by our expenses. It's common sense from a budgeting standpoint. And those are our 2 largest areas of revenue. The other area that came up is our unassigned fund balance. New York State says we're allowed to keep 4% of our overall budget in this unassigned fund balance. Generally, the philosophy when you're accounting and using that 4% fund balance is that really is, for lack of a better term, the rainy day fund. That 4%, that limit that we're given, is generally used for one-time emergency uses. It's kept there in case there is something that you simply didn't plan for, and that can happen. So I just wanted to provide that overview of our current budget situation and how we're entering into this season and the next.
We do have one clarifying question like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the federal government and funding. Can you tell me what percentage of your budget comes from the federal government?
It's $5.6 million out of
What
163
percentage
million.
out of the 100% of your total budget.
So if our revenues are 169 million and that's 5.6 million, I'd have to do the math, but that's what it is.
I'm just asking
Sure.
because I'm looking at some figures that say 0.2%, which is very minute number compared to your budget. So I'm not sure that.
But in raw, so great point. So in raw figures though, if it is $5.6 million, and our fund balance and reserves that we're using to support the budget right now is 7 million. That's a pretty small gap. So that's why we're concerned about that. Okay. Thank you.
So one of the other things that we've heard a lot about is teacher retention. So we looked at the data over the last 3 years, and I think we showed this to folks. What you see here is the number of folks that have left of the 175 people over the 3 years. 50% of them have been in that 0 to 2 range. Then you can kind of see the graph out from there. But I think it's important that we, take a look at this, because we do hear what everyone's saying about the brought up many times, the concerns about retention. And as someone who works in HR, it's something that we work on daily. But we want to make sure when we talk about that, we understand what groups that's coming out of. So we just wanted to share this with everyone and give you all a chance to see what data it is that we're working with this group.
This particular graph, have you accounted for 0 to 2 years of service to the district or 0 to 2 years of service to the profession?
Yeah, good question. This is a reflection of 0 to 2 years working in the district. However, we are working on compiling the data about previous experience for these groups. Additionally, or I should say anecdotally, what we do know is we saw a turnover in the COVID and post-COVID era of our teaching staff. So what we also know is that this is, we had a large group that did leave our organization, and then we're seeing churn within. So it's not like we necessarily had 175 folks leave and 175 new folks come in and stay. What we instead have had is a lot of, a sizable percentage of folks who come in, maybe did a year, wasn't a good fit, didn't work for whatever reason, and then it flips over again. So it's not necessarily, if we have a teaching staff of 550 to 570 folks, it's not necessarily 175 positions that have turned over within that time.
And if we were to take out things like, say, our 2 former Mandarin teachers who worked here in a program that lasted for 2 years, who are no longer here, like they're included in that number.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So like,
yeah, certainly.
so like a big chunk of people who were hired in COVID when we expanded our workforce to
Sure. Yeah.
shrink our class sizes for student health and safety. Then once those restrictions were lifted and we then had a budget fail and created larger class sizes, does this, like, I realize that some people left voluntarily and some people did not leave voluntarily. And does this data account for that? Or could you even account for that?
At some point, you're looking at trying to connect a anecdotal story to a data point, which is certainly doable, but it's not always that simple. But we do know, like, this doesn't take into account retirement, so that's a whole separate group. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely probably a range of all of those things, but this is not telling a story about that specifically.
And what's not represented here too, and maybe that's a slide we bring back later. We have around between 50 and 80 folks leave each year for the last 20 years. So when we look at trend data or attrition data going back 2 decades, the data point I would want to highlight is that this is consistent with our attrition again, not that we like anyone leaving, but it's not, we're not seeing an aberration the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now, like, Zach, you and I know the stories.
Yeah, yeah.
This, and the people sitting in the room and at home don't know every one of these stories. We also haven't taken out, or have you taken out all of the people who are hired on temporary 1-year level A, level B agreements while working towards certification?
Right. So some of that would be included. And then, another important thing to note about Ithaca in Tompkins County particularly is we are prone to being a transient location during people's careers. Oftentimes there's folks who's have a partner or some affiliation with one of the universities in our community, and they are here from anywhere between 1 and 6 or 7 years, and then they move on. So that part that's always been a case here as well. So, but you're right. There's 175 stories connected to all of these exits. And I think you would find a range of reasons behind all of those things.
And are you, since taking over in human resources, have you started more extensively engaging in exit interviews with those 175 stories?
Well, we haven't retroactively went back, but it's certainly in our roadmap of things we want to do. Is it something we could do better with? Absolutely. But it's not, so we don't have that data, but it's certainly something that we want.
And it's something we could partner with too.
Oh, we've been doing them for years.
Yeah, I know, but partnering in a real way. Yeah.
So a couple of notes that what we have on the ITA proposals that we've seen that we wanted to talk about from what we're seeing before we get back to our counter proposals. As we talked about this just seconds ago, 68% of the teachers who have left in the past 3 years had less than 4 years of experience with our school district. Now, only 16% of the departing teachers that we saw in our organization over the last 3 years had been with our organization for in the 10 to 20 year range, except for retirements. Some folks did choose to retire. That's not included. One of the things that we noticed in our review is that the ITA proposal seemed to heavily favor teachers in the mid-career, and this is just noticing, a mid-career window of 10 to 20 years. And what we felt like was that the outcome of that, based on what we were able to see and understand, that we'd love to hear more and have the data if you all can make it available to us, is that some of our newest teachers would be seeing under these plans increases of as little as 3.75. The previous proposals that we had seen from you all had it as little as 2. It seems like it's come up to 3.75. That's great. And this is where we'd also like to know more. So that group could be seeing 3.75, but then maybe some other folks could be getting anywhere between 4 to 18 or even more %. We'd love to hear more about that at some point, because we want to understand how that works and what that looks like. And then ultimately our analysis is that with the long-term sustainability of what we were seeing is that it's really weighted heavily towards folks with more experience, and we can certainly talk about why that might be, but there are some financial implications of that as it lives on into years 10, 15, and 20 that we'd have to consider when we're talking about stuff. So this leads us to the proposals that we're going to give you all today, and you have in your packets. Ideally, we want to provide equitable compensation for all ITA experience levels. We want to, our data indicates that folks that are here for not a particularly long time are turning over at a higher rate. Those teachers tend to be teachers newer in their career, but there are some folks with more experience as well. But so what we want to do is we want to incentivize folks with a retention plan that gives longevities. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but I want to be very clear about these longevities, that what we're talking about is you complete 5 years, we added $750 to your base salary. You complete another 5 years, we add $1,500. It's not just $750, it's another new $1,500. You complete another 5 years, we're going to add $2,250. You complete another 5 years, we're going to add $3,000. So a teacher who's taught 20 years, after they complete their 20th year, is going to get an additional $3,000 added to their base salary.
I'm confused because we're talking about proposal 3.
Yeah, sorry,
Right.
proposal 2.
We're still talking about proposal 2.
Yeah, yep. I'm just saying that's our main, yeah.
I guess I'm even more confused. Are we
Okay.
supposed to be considering proposal 3 or proposal 2 today?
All of them. You pick.
Well, let's get to
Oh.
that now.
Yep.
You've given us choices.
Yes,
Yes,
and not in rank order.
Let's-
You good, Zach? Let me jump in now. Now, let's put up the proposals, not in rank order. And we have been authorized to share some modifications to previously submitted proposals and a new proposal. So there are 3 in total, and I'll go through them now. And while I have strong preferences for one, again, you can consider each and every one of them, or reject each and every one of them. And the first one is a revisiting of what we shared in our first session. Why did we offer a 2-year proposal? Well, as we've been at the table with other bargaining units and historically, we've offered these shorter term deals with the anticipation of the fiscal climate shifting or changing. And that's where the first time I heard the rollover budget, it was a rollover contract. And at this table, we were talking about rolling over contracts with significant pay increases at the time. And at the time, we would think it was 2%. But now we're offering a significant pay increase of 4%. But rolling some things over, a shorter term deal so that we could come back to the table with hopes that the fiscal climate has changed both federally and at the state and locally. So that first proposal represents that 2-year deal at 4% each year. However, we have removed some of those things that caused some confusion the last time we were here around retention bonuses in hard to fill areas and et cetera. So it's just simply that. Again, one to consider. Proposal number 2, and I wish maybe Dom, you helped me go a little bit deeper. you've seen this proposal before, but I think it's important for us to clarify and underscore some pieces in here that from my perspective, get at the predictability, but also gets at the mid and late career retention incentive efforts. As we're going to be adding a significant amount of money to folks' bases as they are with our organization longer. Again, this second proposal is a 4-year proposal at 4% each year. The total dollar amount is 19.68, which is what we've been authorized to give. But Dami, would you please explain how this longevity contributes to some predictability and some significant incentives for the mid-year?
Sure, happy to do that. I think Zach just clarified the longevity steps and what they look like. And I was privileged to be part of a community conversation the other evening. And I think we need some more clarity around what this particular plan was. And that's one of the reasons why we're bringing it up again, because the way that it was mentioned back to me in a conversation was this idea that it was a 750 and then you add another 750 after the next 5 years. That's not accurate. I want to make sure that we're all clear on what this proposal actually says. So and I'm going to just repeat what Zach said so we're clear. Year 5 of service, it's $750 plus the 4% increments over the next years. Year 10 is an additional $1,500. I know I'm repeating Zach, but I want to make sure we have this clear. It's $1,500 added, not $750 added to the previous $750. It's $1,500, 4% for the next 4 years, 5 years. And then at 15 years and so on and so on, just to be clear that that's the total. So compounded over the 4-year period, someone would make, and I think Zach, you may have mentioned this earlier, the total of between $18,000 and $20,000 just in the compounded bonuses for retention over that period.
During the course of their career.
During the course of their
Yeah.
career,
Right.
correct.
So-
I'm sorry, yes.
So to
during
be
the course of their
clear,
career.
a teacher that joins under this plan would, if you had 2 trajectories, one without longevities and one with longevities, over a 25-year career, assuming a stable 2%,
Right.
rate, but could certainly be more, they would see an additional compensation of between $18,000 and $20,000. So if I don't have the longevities, I might be at $80,000 at the end of my career. Dom does, he'd be at $100,000. So essentially, and that's every year, but it's compounding, it's growing a little bit every year. So we just want to make it clear that that's providing a pathway for folks to have, to have a much greater incentive.
Yes.
When you originally presented this, there was a no retro attached to this. Are you still holding to that no retro? So I, as someone with over 20 years of experience in the district, would if our unit were to agree to this, would I expect immediately to get the 750, the 1,500, the 2,250, and the 3,000, and then wait until year 25 to get the 3,750? Or would I only get the 3,750 because that's the only longevity bonus still available to me?
No, it does not include that. And that's why we compounded the retention bonuses at those points.
So then
address that
someone who
gap.
comes in at year 4
Correct.
is going to be eligible for every one of these bonuses to their base salary as they continue growing through their
Yes.
career in the district. But those who have been here for as long as I have been here, because we all agreed to the agreements we agreed to in the past when the economy was terrible,
How about
we
this?
still don't.
I
get-
appreciate you, Catherine. Thank you for this clarifying question. And the proposal is, as we've stated, and again, we're open to the conversation.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just- So are we
I hear
open
what you-
to the consideration of retro?
We love your counter to what we propose here today. Yes.
Okay.
To keep this thing moving.
Sure.
But yeah, just to clarify, it does not include the retro going,
Correct.
but
That's
we were
right.
open to any kind of counter, because I have questions about how they would look and how they would work, and we would need to cost it out and put, we've been able to quantify this to the dollar. That would require us to quantify more, and
Yeah.
that's all. So I just want, particularly looking at where our folks fall on the range. And then proposal number 3. And this is new, we're 2 years. and give us an opportunity to clarify our definition of leapfrogging. And our definition of it is listed here. I can't see any. Is it listed right there? Definition right there.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Is, so our definition is there, and but we want to clarify and make sure we all have the same definition of leapfrogging. And we would fix any leapfrogging issues. I've heard, based on our calculations are very different from what I've heard as far as the number of folks who've been leapfrogged in our organization. So we're looking forward to the conversation with as few or as many people who feel like they've been leapfrogged, and we'll make it right based on the definition that we land on of leapfrogging.
No,
So
that's
3
awesome.
distinct proposals for your consideration. I hope that you hear that we heard you, and we are trying to address the issues that we see and you have shared with us as well. And going back to where we started, and thanking Brian again for having me reflect on how many of these sessions I've been in. This is the most aggressive proposal we've ever put on the table in this organization as far as total dollar amounts, some of the other pieces as well. And also with recognition that it may not be enough, but I want to state on behalf of the organization and the folks who've authorized us to submit this is the most aggressive we've ever been. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
Can I ask a clarifying question? You said you
Please.
quantified the longevity for the next 2 years. I'm just wondering. what
That 4-year
total
proposal
number
we
is.
anticipate is going to cost us 19.68% over 4 years to do.
Of 4 years. All right, can you tell me what that total number is?
The total dollar amount,
Yeah,
we can pull it up.
Yeah, take a minute. I can pull it
Yeah,
up.
okay.
we'll get that to you.
I think we shared that with you all.
I thought we did too, but
The spreadsheet we shared with you all had that number.
Maybe
so
I just don't have.
Yeah,
it.
you have it. Well, you might not have it. Someone has it. I know Brian has it, but
So that for
Yeah.
the 4 years of longevity, you have a dollar amount attached to what that would.
we have a
cost.
dollar
That's
amount
right.
attached to our proposal number 2.
Yep.
That 19.68 increase over the current ITA salaries is X number. We have
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hopefully you can
But
just
I
get that
think,
number.
Tammy, what you're asking for is what is the number just for the longevity?
Yes,
That might be hard to quantify.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Not,
yeah, I mean, you can back it out by looking at the
Yeah.
difference of basically the difference is, 4 years at 4% would be 16%. So the difference is going to be 3.68% additional. That's the difference. So, I mean, that's how you can get to the number. We could do it together after. Happy to
I'm
do
just
that.
wondering if you looked at the individual people who will fall in line,
Yep.
get that number.
have a
and what
list.
the
we
total
got that.
dollars.
We got that
That's what I'm
spreadsheet.
We have
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
all right, I got you.
And you all, yes, and you have that too. And I'm happy to review it with anyone who wants to look at it.
Yeah, we didn't put names next to it. It was just, yeah,
Fair.
I got
I
you.
mean, I appreciate not putting names up on the big screen with my people in the room. And see-through New York exists.
Don't
So,
I know?
Sure.
Yeah.
if we get to a point where that's the way to make the discussion happen, then that's the way that, it's not top secret,
Yeah.
secure, don't put it over a signal chat.
Yeah.
Data. Sorry, I listened to the Daily this
I
morning.
knew signal was gonna come up in this session.
Too soon.
I knew it was coming.
Okay, so thank you. We appreciate this.
All right.
If you can send this slideshow, make sure that
Sure,
Brian
will
has
do.
it so that we can talk about it. I do want to, we invited a few guests today, and specifically as you were presenting.
Did
You
we,
have
sorry,
more?
did we want to talk about leapfrogging as a definition first or?
I mean, I think so in your slides, you had a slightly different definition than you have in your document.
Again, we're open to what's coming to a collective.
All that we need to say at this moment on that is that we fundamentally believe that a teacher with 6 years of teaching experience and 32 credits should make more money than a teacher with 5 years of teaching experience and 32 credits.
Agreed.
Great, yeah.
We fixed that.
And if a teacher with 5 years and 32 credits is making more than a teacher with 6 years and 32
Yeah.
credits, that teacher has leapfrogged. They have gone over the other person. So that is the definite,
Sure.
that is the credit, because you had in your slide something about the credit, yes, the credits are going to change it. You can have fewer years of experience and way more credits and have one salary that's different than
Got it.
having lots of
Yeah.
experience and not a lot of
So it's
credits.
really just the like for like.
Yes.
Same scenarios,
Yes.
or
Yes.
like same
Same.
lane, but lesser years.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly. So as you were presenting, you spoke to the ITA's proposal, quote, favoring mid-career hires. And we actually invited two guests that I think will be able to give the qualitative anecdotal perspective as to why the ITA feels that our mid-career hires need a boost. And I am going to first invite Danielle. Is Mabel coming too?
Where do they want to sit?
They're gonna sit right next to Gary.
Oh, cool.
Here, we'll spot down there.
That's all.
Okay.
It's okay. We assign jobs. We have a baby holder on our job list today.
Baby holder.
Guys.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Gardner. Yeah, we're just separated for a bit, but you can say hi to these people here. This is Mabel Gardner, and she's 2.5. Then there's, okay, so I will do my best. Over the past 2 weeks, I've watched the ITA negotiations from my house because I do not have enough to afford full-time daycare for my daughter. When Mabel was born, I returned to the classroom as soon as my leave ended. 8 weeks C-section. Well, sorry, go over there. You're good, or stay with mommy. So she was in daycare 3 days a week at 8 weeks, so I could keep teaching in the community I care so deeply about. But every month, the cost of that care was more than half of what I brought home in my paycheck. The difference of having her go to daycare for 3 days versus 5 is my grocery bill. I'm a family of 3. So as I listen from home, rather than hear about compressed salaries, I heard you all. I heard you asking, who are they? How many are they? Are there 100? 30? Who are these people? So I'm here to tell you, I am the person. I am one of them. I am the who this happened to. I am compressed. My name's Danielle Gardner. I've been an elementary teacher in the Ithaca City School District for 19 years. All of them at Caroline. And I know almost all of you. You've been my former principal. You've been my former TOSA. I've been in meetings. And I feel like we just know each other from life and here. And you've been my superintendent. I've seen your whole career here. For those who don't know me, I hope you get to. One, because I'm awesome. But also because I believe in ICSD's mission. I have for all of those years and still do. I've spent my entire career making sure every single child that I come in contact with feels safe, feels seen, feels valued, feels educated, and feels loved. I've mostly taught fifth grade, almost exclusively in co-taught inclusive classrooms. I am a believer in the mission. I've spent my summers as a recreation and mainstreaming specialist for the Ithaca Youth Bureau, for Stewart Park Day Camp. I even became the supervisor who trained them. Now, after nearly 2 decades, 6 contracts, at least 400 personal students, 45 graduate credits, I earn less than some colleagues with half of my experience and fewer credentials. Teachers with 12 or 13 years in this district, and even some with just 3, make more than me. I didn't know. And it's about timing. It's about timing. It's demoralizing as a human. Let me explain. Teacher compression, ICSD. It means people like me, hired, are now earning, in earlier years, are now earning the same or even less than new hires with similar or fewer qualifications, simply because they came in when for more favorable terms. If I left ICSD right now, $12,000 to $18,000 now. That's on my base that I will then get every year until I retire. And I'm young because I started early, but not that early. And I saw that, not that early. And it's just hard. It is for real. Now I lost my page because. So the real cost, though, of our current salary structure is losing people like me. But it's just not me. It's happening to hundreds of us. The pull to leave is growing because we can't afford to stay. The pain of staying is also real because we all know we have less, but we will do it. So in our district, we talk about equity, and I heard equity and equal. That is hard. We have spent more professional development on that sentence than ever. So there is no equity in a system that tells mid-career people like me, the educators, that we are worth less than people who just arrived. There's no equity in telling a teacher of 19 years of service and with a young child at home that she needs to choose between full-time daycare or her groceries so she could still be a teacher. There is no equity in expecting love without respect. This is a pivotal moment, and you can fix this like you can. You can choose to retain the educators like me who built this district and who keep it running every day because we want to keep it running every day. Or you can continue to lose us one by one because we simply can't afford to stay. So my good copy, because this isn't even done because I was finger typing it under her crib last night, is up there. But the one thing that I think needs to be said is we need a salary system that honors that. Oh, that was fantastic. I love that. Great. Ooh, now I have to figure out the page. But I know. Because I know all of you and I've been here, so I know you. My biggest fear is that in the next few years, the place that I love with all of those teachers are not going to be here when she gets there. Because I bought my house, which I couldn't afford, but I borrowed some money from mommy, and my one little bathroom, and that she's going to show up just like our whole community does, wanting to learn, and we will all be gone. Thanks, guys.
I am going to invite another guest, my like beloved former colleague, former union advocate, Liz Quadrosi, who is a special guest because she is no longer an ICSD employee.
That's it.
Thank you.
I did not know what Catherine meant when she said there will be people there. You won't miss it. My name is Elizabeth Quadrosi. My first teaching job was at ICSD. I worked for ICSD either 10 or 11 years, can't remember which. We live here in the community. I am not one of those people who left because my spouse works at Cornell. He works for the city of Ithaca. We live in Lansing. When we were searching for a house, wanted to live in the city of Ithaca, and we were told we could not afford it. And we afforded a house in Lansing. So I'd like to I'm so nervous. Dispel some of the misconceptions about the community that I live in. I am able to be here because my school district provides affordable childcare. So my son is at the after-school program right now. My daughter is old enough to stay home. Ithaca was the only place I ever wanted to teach, and I landed my dream job in my dream building, in my dream classroom. I was a 6th grade science teacher. It was a job that was made for me, but I'm nervous. I imagined retiring there. I was certain that was what was going to happen. Working in my union capacity, I knew about neighboring schools' salaries, but it wasn't until I actually looked at this salary schedule. I'm so sorry. Take a deep breath, Mrs. Q. It's okay. It wasn't until I actually looked that I realized how big the disparity was. Most people don't know this, but I was offered a job at Lansing. That is where I teach now. I was offered a job at Lansing the year before I took one. I declined it because I said, I'm going to give it one more chance, one more shot. When I started teaching at Ithaca, I made about $35,000, and I'm a pretty expensive teacher because I came in capped out on credits. I used to run out of money in my bank account. I would run, and of course, we have bills and, your family, but my bank account would go to zero. I would have to borrow money from my husband to get gas. I never paid for childcare or anything. I didn't have any of that money. I would when I left Ithaca, I was a department chair. I co-chaired NJHS for many years at DeWitt, so I had an additional bump in my salary, as those things give you. When I interviewed, or when I took the job at Lansing, it was a $17,000 pay raise. And I don't do anything except teach. I don't do any clubs. Believe it or not, I'm not a union member. I am not a department. I just teach. I also now teach a different grade and different courses. I don't teach science anymore. I love science. I miss it. But I got a $17,000 pay raise. My bank account does not go down to zero anymore. My children, I work at work and I come home. My children were very young when I was working at Ithaca, and I rarely saw them in the evenings. And now I am home every day at 3:30, unless I don't want to be, because they're kids. The insurance is also better. My daughter has a chromosomal disorder, which requires specialists and growth hormones. We don't pay for any of it. We don't pay for the medicine. We don't pay for the doctor's visits in Rochester to the specialists. When I was considering leaving, I said to my husband, I'm gonna miss the longevity bonus though. And he was like, Liz, $17,000. It doesn't matter. And I think that that is really important to think about, that I was trying to hang on for that little morsel I was going to get for the time I'd been there. I don't know. I didn't get I didn't get a special salary. No, that's the salary for someone with my years and my credits. I don't know if I should say this, but I did also get my sick days rolled over. One thing I want to say is years ago when I was sitting in a board meeting here, someone said that other districts are poaching ICSD staff. And that statement has stayed with me because it really bothered me. Because poaching is taking something that doesn't belong to you. The employees do not belong to the Ithaca City School District. They are choosing to work for the Ithaca City School District. I only knew about the Lansing job because I looked. Sometimes employees look for other jobs and then they decide to go interview and then they decide the other place is better. That's not poaching. That's making an informed decision. I tell everybody to come work with me. My life is so much better for so many more reasons. It's not just the money. I am not afraid of getting hit by students anymore. I am not afraid to send a student out of my room because their needs are not being met, and I'm going to meet the needs of the other 20 kids. No job is perfect. This job is incredibly hard. It's still incredibly hard in 5th grade math. Just think about that for a minute. I left because the money was better, the place was better, and I was valued.
Thank you, Liz. So as I was working with the counter proposal that we were given yesterday, and as I was driving in this morning and laying awake last night, anticipating this meeting today, I developed a long list of questions, and I have not yet had a chance to meet with my team to discuss my list of questions. So I'm kind of going a little bit off the cuff, but I've been elected to do this job and they trust me. And my list of questions was also developed before understanding that this proposal 3 was not proposal 3, but was a menu of proposal options. So I may have to adjust some of my questions as I ask them. And I'm just gonna ask them and let you answer them or tell me when you'll answer them and then just go on to the next one. So, and part of them are for the people in the room, because very few people in the room have seen these proposals before we came in. So our negotiations working agreements state that new proposals and counter proposals should be communicated in writing via our shared meeting agenda with at least 48 hours notice. However, this counter proposal was delivered yesterday morning, which was less than 48 hours. And I'm just wondering if you could please explain the timeline of why we received this counter proposal less than 48 hours.
Yeah, I recognize that. And I may have foreshadowed at our last meeting. We needed to engage with our Board of Education. And unlike our teams, our board meets every 2 weeks, if we're lucky, and we have to talk. So I mentioned authorization to extend these proposals. We didn't get that until Tuesday, and you were at the meeting.
Yep.
It was pretty late.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
late.
that's-
My next question is actually for Jill, related to the board, because I anticipated that would be the explanation. So Jill, at our last session on March 20th, Dr. Brown indicated that he would need to negotiate a counter proposal with the Board of Education before he could bring it to us. The board met on Tuesday. My first question about that is, since this was not discussed during the general board meeting, is it fair to assume that this negotiation took place during the executive session on Tuesday evening?
I will break my usual stance and expectation of being an observer only at these negotiations. And I will answer that, yes, this was discussed in executive session with the board.
Okay, and thank you. and I appreciate you for observing. Can you describe the process of the negotiation that took place at this executive session? Like, what happened?
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were these counter proposals presented by district administration to the board? Were they presented by the board to administration, or were they developed collaboratively?
It's against the law for board members to talk about what happened in executive session. Could be immediate removal from the board to do so. So we can't answer anything that was discussed in executive session.
Okay, then I have an opinion question.
You have a statement or a question? Which one?
Question.
Okay, I got you.
Do you believe that this counter proposal reflects the will of the board?
I can't answer that.
So something specific to the counter proposal. So originally there was proposal number 1 for 2 years of 4% raises applied uniformly to all teachers. This was presented in January and rejected by the ITA then because it did not meet the needs of our members. Then an ICSD counter proposal offered on March 12th extended the 4% uniform increases to a 4-year agreement and added additional monies for longevity bonuses, tenure attainment, certification bonuses, and brought the counter proposal closer to, but not all the way to 5%. That was proposal 2. And we rejected that proposal on March 20th as it still did not meet the needs of our members. Today, you've given us a third option and revised proposal 2 a little bit and given us a third option that returns to the 2 years of 4% raises applied uniformly to all teachers. Can you please explain the rationale behind the monetary regression in the third proposal?
Maybe y'all heard it differently, but I'm trying to follow. Where is the monetary regression in which
So-
proposal?
4% flat for 2 years as opposed to 4% at 4 years plus other bonuses.
They're two different proposals.
Yes, and again, remember that I'm working with, I thought proposal 1 and 2
Yeah.
were off the table. And then proposal 3 came back and it was basically just proposal 1 with some agreement to look into a problem.
Okay, proposal 2 at 4 years at 19.68 is the proposal with the most money and the one we have not regressed as far as the total dollar amount. Is that the one you're asking about as far as the regression?
I'm asking about proposal 3.
Proposal 3, that's new.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the
That's the
and
leapfrog.
yeah, and keep
Okay.
in mind. that
That's the
I'm asking
leapfrog.
about
Oh, yeah,
this.
because
Yeah,
we anticipate that it would take some funds to take care of the leapfrogging.
so that's the rationale. So bring
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
bring the overall down to be able to have money to account for the leave, right?
And I'm trying to understand which one was the overall in which proposal. One, the original proposal? I'm confused.
Maybe if you just preface like the question, there's the proposal for a 2-year deal at 4%, then there's a proposal for a 4-year deal with 4% and longevity, and then the third proposal is the 4% and leapfrogging issues.
I
being
think I
taken.
actually understand the answer to the question.
Gotcha,
So the
okay,
question that I was asking was like, why go from the 1 back to the
Yeah.
3?
yeah.
Without knowing that that was a menu of options that we were being given. And Dr. Brown explained the rationale, which was what I was asking
Yeah.
for, which was bring the overall proposal back down to be able to have other money set aside to be able to fix the
Right.
issue. So I
We're
understand.
not taking any money off the table. That's the soundbite coming from us. Yeah.
Okay. So can you please explain? No, that doesn't really matter because it's really the next question. So in counter proposal 3, you stated that extra action that the district in collaboration with ITA representatives will assess each case to determine the extent of leapfrogging on a case-by-case basis. If discrepancies in the pay scale are identified, salaries will be adjusted and protected to ensure the most equitable resolution. So we've analyzed the spreadsheet provided by the ICSD Human Resources Department when we originally asked for data. We received a spreadsheet that outlines the current salary, years of service, and professional learning increments of all of our members of the unit. If the data provided by the district in this spreadsheet is accurate, 428 of the 574, though I heard you say 576, so over 400 of the close to 600 members have been affected by this issue. That was in the data request that we got on February 7th. Can you verify whether the spreadsheet that was provided to the ITA is accurate?
I think the question, so it's accurate, but I'm curious how you're interpreting.
And let me ask you to add a question to his question. Affected positively or negatively? 478 people have been leapfrogged. So that meaning that that's 400 people. Some folks have the higher salary?
Have either leapfrogged or been leapfrogged?
Cool. All right, that's a good clarification. And so we will be endeavoring to bring the folks who were leapfrogged, I hate this term, the folks who are making less money, similar to the stories we've heard, based on their years of experience, and someone with the same years of experience and same credits. Anyone who has a colleague who's making more money and they have the same level of experience and credits, we're going to make sure they're making.
Right, I think there's a third step
Yeah.
though. Those credits, as they're earning them, if you earn them earlier in your career, you will leapfrog over folks. And if you earn them and stop earning more credits, and then the other person catches up to you, you could still be earning more than them based on compounding effects from, so it's not,
Yeah, that's part of the problem.
right, it's not just.
If you earn them early in your career, it's compounding.
Oh,
I could have 7 years, 45 credits.
Yeah.
That I came in with, and then I did nothing, but I enjoyed the compounding effect of the annual raises on that
Yeah,
versus someone who who has now reached 7 years and has just got their 45 credits.
Yeah.
I'm still going to be earning more.
I
Okay,
understand that intimately as somebody
Okay.
who maxed out my credits real early in my career
right.
over 20 years ago, who has not been leapfrogged. And if I were to quit and be rehired into my job tomorrow, would not get a raise to do it. Like, I understand how that.
Do you have the number on the folks who've been leapfrogged and who are negatively impacted?
As in the people who have been leapfrogged, so they are behind?
Yes.
Yeah,
That number.
we have that.
What's that number?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm just wondering if the spreadsheet is accurate
So,
first.
but what I was saying is, like, the spreadsheet is accurate.
Yeah.
But I'm curious how you got to your number of 470 folks, 70
It's
something.
a combination of people who are doing the leapfrogging and the folks who have been leapfrogged. She
Okay.
said it.
Because, well,
So I'm looking at my CFO over here. 428 is the number. Those are 428 people who have been either, or who have been,
428 people who have been leapfrogged based on the information provided in the ICSD.
so a couple of questions then. When the data that you're looking at is years of service in the Ithaca City School District, right? So I guess, and we had asked this 3 or 4 sessions ago, how many credits were those folks coming in with, and how many credits are how many years of experience were they granted upon hire? So what we're saying is, let's look at that. If we look at that and we're finding discrepancies, yeah, we're happy to talk about it.
okay. And in a step and lane system, that's not going to matter. So you are saying that the spreadsheet is, the data is accurate. Because we sometimes get, the data is not accurate. So I'm asking, is the data accurate? Because we're
Like
working with data. given
the
from
data,
site.
like any giant data set, it's, there certainly could be outliers or discrepancies or typos, but it's reasonably accurate.
Okay.
But I want to be clear that it's the years of service are reflecting the years of service in the district. So if someone came and taught 20 years somewhere else, right, that's not going to show on that spreadsheet, nor is that spreadsheet going to show if someone earned their credits in year 1 versus year 20.
And earlier you said that you don't yet have the data for
We're working on that.
your work.
Yep.
So that not, okay.
Which data then?
So what that tells me is that for the purpose of knowing the how the significance of leapfrogging, if that data is just years of service in the district and not years of service in the profession, then for the purpose of this conversation, then that data is actually not accurate.
Well, hold on. It's
It
not that the
doesn't-
data is not accurate. It's how you
For the
like,
purpose of
for the conversation, it's not applicable, but it's not inaccurate data.
Okay.
That matters though, like,
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
it does matter.
I
It's
don't want us to
just
say it's
matters.
inaccurate data because that is correct. And we're happy to, and what we're saying is that we would actually, we called it like a scalpel approach. We'll go in and look at them, compare with you. Here's what we found. What, you know,
Yeah,
look in the
sure.
archives and say, all right, let's go back and see.
Right, and that's part of our proposal as well.
Okay.
And could I just maybe ask, like, when you created your proposals and came, talked about leapfrogging, you indicated, I think, that you had the data of who and how much and how.
Yes,
Can you share that with us as well? Just so we can.
we got that from human
It's
resources.
it's our spreadsheet that we
Yeah,
have.
that's your
We have,
spreadsheet.
okay. But you don't
So
have a
you're-
different
okay.
data set.
No, we don't have a
Okay.
different data set. We were using your spreadsheet
No, we
that you
understand.
gave us.
We understand. And, okay, so
Okay.
yes, that would,
Yeah, so we just need different data to be able, so we can no longer accurately answer the question of how many people this is because the data that we were given doesn't give us the data that we need to be able to accurately answer that question, which is fine. We
That's-
can still move
That's part of
forward.
our proposal. We'll tighten it up. yeah.
Yes. Can you explain, and this is really like Zach, you and I, as the people who do this every day and the systems of it, can you explain the action plan for how case-by-case reviews would happen?
So, first of all, we'd have to come up with a common definition of what is and what is not leapfrogging, right? And so what we would do is, so often we've heard it a number of times, people feel as if this has happened, right? So we'd say, all right, we could have an intake form, or we could have a review of whoever's asking for it, right? And we could go ahead and pull the we use FileBound, but it's our archive system, and look at the original board report. What were they assigned at? How many years credit were they granted? How many years service do they have? I can say I've done some initial looking at this. Things that you will, we tend to find are, someone might be with us for, 20 years, right? But they might also have worked as a sub for the first 3. That's a very common thing. So we would look at that. We'd see when did that first hiring letter go out. We'd have the date that they entered the ITA, and we'd just kind of go through it.
Can you estimate how many labor hours a review like that takes?
So we have a team pulling some of that data already. And it would be a sizable, probably take, I'd be making up a number, but we could
Sure.
try to estimate it together if you'd like.
Yeah. What do you see as the advantage to implementing a systematic approach to assess this issue on a case-by-case basis when there's potentially so many individual cases that would need to be considered?
So I think the advantage of it is to know, again, we've had a lot of conversations about the frustration and what folks are saying. And so I think the advantage is actually diving into the numbers. We've been talking a lot about math lately, right? And without going in too much of a tangent, specifically quantifying, having shared data sets where we all know what we're saying and that it means the same thing, that's really important, because that can then, ultimately between the ITA and everyone else on this side of it, we can all get on the same page, because even in our conversations, we've had a back and forth on what does this mean? How do people feel? A lot of how do we feel about it? And we want to let's dive in and assess it. So figuring out a specific number, I think that matters.
In that proposal, you mentioned if we find that this has happened to a person, that there would be equitable resolution. So if we were to implement this action, what do you see as an equitable resolution if a teacher has in fact been leapfrogged, more specific, and what would be the impact to the person doing the leapfrogging?
I think the questions to these, or the answers to these questions are going to really depend upon the shared definition of leapfrogging. So if 2 teachers came in on the same day and one earned more credits quicker, right? Now you're down 3 or 4 or 5 years. The second person begins to earn credits right? And the first person stops. Eventually, the second person will catch up in credits. But the first person's still going to earn more money, even though they've been here the same amount of time, because the first person started moving across quicker and got the compounding effects of annual raises. So that's not leapfrogging. We don't see that as leapfrogging. If the union does, and we need to talk more about that, we believe that if at the same, I'm going to be very simplistic in this, and I don't
No, I-
apologize just because it's hard with numbers. If we came in together, we each had 45 credits. We worked 5 years and we each gained 5 credits a year in the same exact years, then there should be no leapfrogging.
Well, and the way that a step and lane works is that you go your years of service
Yeah.
and your number of credits, you go across, you go down, you circle the number, that's the number.
but I mean-
So when you got hired doesn't matter at all.
In terms of trying to figure out how many of your members got leapfrogged in whatever definition we come to, we would have to look at those type of things, because in my example, that wouldn't be, we wouldn't consider that a leapfrogging, right? If we both started on the same day, we both earned our credits at the same rate annually, there's no way that there can be a leapfrogging situation in that situation.
So I'm caught up in how is there an equitable resolution if there's not a standard for what that resolution should be?
Well, we didn't say there's not a standard.
Well,
We
then
do-
what, then
We
how
have to
would you
define,
standardize it?
what the problem is, right? So if we can I think we have to define the problem before we can say what the solution to the undefined problem is.
Okay.
But no one would earn less. That's for sure. Like, right. Like, we're not saying if we're trying to get equitable, no one's going to lose salary.
Yeah, we're not-
That's important for you to
Yeah.
say out loud, that no
Yeah.
one will lose salary.
Trying to pay people
no matter what.
more.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, we're trying to pay people for their service and their commitment,
Okay.
more, not less.
How do you see addressing these issues on a case by case basis as being and you know, not having a clear, just predictable, you can look at it, you can point to it. Or maybe that's what we'll end up with, but how do you see this as being in the best interest of our teachers and in keeping with the tenets of collective bargaining?
The best interest of our teachers, from my perspective, based on what I've been hearing, is if I'm in the organization with the same amount of credits and the same amount of service, I should be paid the same. And if I have more, I should be paid more. We see it as in our best interest to make sure that happens. And in the interest of collective bargaining, we want to do that in collaboration, so that whatever we do to make that happen is aligned with what we have in contract language, so that if it ever happens again, we have a system and we have language that speaks to, that's not our intent. And it was never our intent when we settled on the previous 4 contracts that I've been a part of. Even when we were adding money to the base for newer educators, knowing that that would create compression, we also didn't want folks to be, as we're terming it, leapfrog in the ways in which we were determined. So if that has happened, and again, we're looking at the data very carefully, and we're struggling to find where that's happened. And when we find that it's happened, we will fix it.
So shifting a little bit. So as classroom teachers, we're highly trained to teach our students that in order to prove a claim, one must support that claim with adequate evidence, data, and reasoning. 7th grade English, every single day, I taught my students that claim, evidence, reasoning is a really important format to persuasively speak and write. Over the last 2 months, we've heard a lot of claims from the ICSD leadership that you cannot afford to meet our well-documented needs for a step and lane salary structure or a percentage increase that matches our requests. Reminder that our request is currently 7.5% increase to the overall salary pot each year for 4 years and the transition to a step and lane system. Can you please provide concrete, qualitative, and quantitative evidence and reasoning to support your claim that the ICSD cannot afford to shift to a step and lane salary structure regardless of the percentage point?
Let's clarify, because I think I'm represented in ICSD leadership. And I want to clarify what was purported that I said, or we said. We never rejected step and lane systems. We actually asked you all to come back to us and show us how a step and lane system would work within the 19.68 parameters that we provided. At our last session, you came back and said, it won't work. And that was the last we talked about step and lane.
So I think that you misunderstood the.
Maybe
the word.
I'm sure I did, because that is my
So,
understanding.
Yeah, yes. So members of your team, members of my team met with the step and lane salary schedule at the 19 and change
Yeah.
percent. And they all looked at it together to go over how it operates.
Correct.
How does it function? We, after doing that work as an ITA, said, yes, this functions, but this does not meet the needs of our members and it does not work for them. So we did not come back presenting that as an option that we were considering because the percentage in it was not a percentage that our members can support. Right? The system functions.
I got you. Our messaging has not changed, Catherine and everyone in the room. It's 19.68 over 4 years. And if that can work in a step and lane system, bring that to us. And if you're saying it won't work, then the step and lane system from our perspective, because we didn't propose a step and lane, won't work either. But it's, as of today, it's not 20%, it's not 22%, and it's definitely not 34 compounded, which is what I heard at the last session. You all came back. And I'm just trying to be as simple as I can. And again, that number is an aggressive number from our perspective. And I want to be going on record that we have not rejected step and lane. We just rejected the fact that you said it wouldn't work, but we accepted the fact that you said it wouldn't work at the parameters that we provided.
So do you have, and maybe this is for the next time we meet on April 10th, or maybe after we caucus, can you provide us with qualitative and quantitative evidence to prove that we cannot afford to shift to a step?
I will, because I mean, we've been involved with budget deliberations for the last year. And if you, in addition to the last several years, and along those years, we've had a lot happen, including a budget failing. So how I would want to get clarification about how to present to you our financial picture. I can present to you our third-party auditor's report. I can present to you the budget that we proposed to our board last Tuesday and the information that's now publicly available. I can present to you our fund balance analysis. These things would take hundreds of hours to present to you in the way that I think I'm hearing you ask, to get to the same place that we are now. This is the proposal from us at 19.68 over 4 years. And I've said it, and I will say it again. We said it at our board meeting, and it's out there publicly available, and it's also written by the third-party auditors. We are tapping into fund balances. We're tapping into reserves to fund operational expenses today.
So would presenting concrete qualitative and quantitative evidence to support the reasoning to not be able to afford an overall salary pot increase of 7.5% a year for 4 years also require hours and hours of education that were?
I can share with you some qualitative, because that would be my perspective, and quantitative in that the total dollar amounts that are part of our 3-part budget that's now publicly available on our website. Qualitatively, and from my perspective, with 80% of our budget now being committed to compensation and benefit for our various bargaining units. And as you mentioned, we have a tentative agreement with the education support professionals, and we have agreements with everyone else in the area of 4%. As we put together a budget qualitatively and quantitatively for next year, and thinking about the following year, we're keeping it within that 4% and 5% range for not only the compensation packages that we settled, but for the ITA, which is our largest. With state aid increases, a tax cap, and knowing that our revenue is only going to increase by about 3% to 3.79% over the foreseeable future, if we're lucky, if there are no federal fund reductions, no gap elimination adjustment, all things we've experienced in the past. qualitatively and quantitatively, I'm presenting to you and the community that doing anything beyond a 4% increase on the 80% of our overall budget that we can control, and we can't control the other 20%, which are other inflationary costs like gasoline, energy, healthcare, like other things that are going up at a far faster rate than 4%. So I'm presenting a case qualitatively and quantitatively. It would be fiscally irresponsible for me as the leader to say we're going to provide pay increases that are beyond that 4 to 5% range.
So I hear you saying that it wouldn't be fiscally responsible, but are you saying that the ICSD does not have the ability?
What's
to
possible?
pay?
We had answered this question the first night. You asked me that question. We can pay anything. And we said that at this table 6 years ago, 7 years ago when we were negotiating, because that agreement that we finally settled on, at the time, I felt was super aggressive. And I said at the time, it would require us to go over the tax cap once and maybe twice. And we did go over it once to reset our tax base. And we attempted to go over it a second time. So we can pay it. And I know I'm uniquely positioned in this seat that I've served in. I have to honor the fact that I and we want to increase compensation significantly. And I know we have to maintain a tax levy that is palatable to our community. And last year was no better example of how that comes to a head when we start talking about our budget.
My last question, we presented our second counter proposal to you last week, and I do not remember if I heard an official rejection of that counter proposal.
Yeah, we're rejecting the one at 33%.
Thank you for all of those answers and for getting us the slides and for getting us the information. My team has not yet had a chance to talk about any of this. And it is, what time is it? It's 5:30. Can we caucus until 6? And
We can.
sure.
Okay, must say, I have an emergency call. I have to make it 6. So I'm going to be absent right at 6, but I'll come back in as soon as I'm done. Okay.
Well, as long as Bob is here,
No,
and I'm here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We said that you will be in and out. This is the first time I'm going to be absent from any parts of this. I just want folks to know it's not because I don't want to hear it. I'll be watching and everything, but don't adjust. Just make sure you know.
Don't just,
Yeah.
okay, because I was like, do you want us to wait 15 minutes? But we also have a million other things on the agenda. So as long as Bob and I are back here at 6 o'clock, we can keep working.
It's looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Thank you. I hope you all had a chance to, we had a chance. So good, good. So acknowledging that our conversation about salary was really the first item on a pretty packed agenda. We're not going to take a great deal of time in this. As the ITA, we fundamentally believe that teachers with the same years of teaching experience and the same level of professional experience should earn the same salary regardless of when they were hired or when they earned their credits. Therefore, we cannot accept proposal 1, proposal 2, or proposal 3. We are currently maintaining our commitment to our step and lane salary proposal of 7.5% a year for 4 years, the proposal that we submitted last week. But we reserve the right to offer a counter proposal by Monday, April 7th, in anticipation of our Thursday, April 10th negotiating session, and also offer you the same opportunity to offer a counter proposal as well by Monday, April 7th. And with that said, we would like to suggest moving on to some of those other topics. Okay?
Thank you.
So the first topic, we have a new proposal. David, forecasted this last time when we talked about unsecured lactation spaces for our lactating teachers. He has written a proposal for release time for lactating teachers. You can find that on page 13 in your packets. And I'm going to let David take the lead on this.
Yeah, so last week we came to the table, making sure that we had adequate spaces secured for lactation as needed. And I just felt like it was missing another piece. We'd make sure that we're securing the time needed to do that. And I wanted to make sure that we had a system played out, because that offers the best chance for the district to plan in advance, to create schedules, to have the least disruption to the overall workings of a building, right? And the least disruption to a student's academic day. So I have on page 13, we put together a thing. I don't know that I need to go through the rationale with you all. You can read it,
Yeah.
right? The rationale, I think, is very solid. It stands on its own 2 feet. What the proposal says is that in anticipation of returning to work and knowing that you would need to lactate, that there would be a heads up given to the district in as much time as is possible, right? Knowing that every body is unique, every birth is unique, the circumstances one would return to work are going to be unique. So that timeline is really, it's squidgy. So as much as is practicable, is ideal. And that using that advance notice, supervisors, that we notify building leaders to create a space. Also, I did put a provision here that says, hey, supervisors will notify members of a work site where the lactation space is when it's been designated at the start of each year. And if there is not one that has been designated, that notification is given in writing when such a space is designated, right? And what are the procedures for how do I access this? Where's the sign-up sheet? How do I know the room is mine? Because privacy has been a concern for members. So making sure that we have a system that is clear, understood, and that privacy can be ensured so that folks have a peaceful space. So that's kind of the lead-in. Hey, heads up, I have this need. Let's make sure we've got some places in line. And then the second part of the proposal is for the actual release time. First, just iterating or just kind of reiterating that members are welcome to use lunch and prep time for that purpose. But that we need to create an additional up to half hour of time in the day for the purposes of expressing milk. The proposal splits the elementary and the middle and secondary schools just because of the nature of the schedules, right? The nature of the workday is different. I think it's actually easier to start at the secondary level where we have kind of clean period by period. All of our secondary employees have a supervision. The proposal as it stands says that during the period a teacher is lactating, they would be released from supervisory so that they have that extra time in their day for lactation. And that at the elementary levels, that the building leader will work with the lactating teacher to ensure that coverage will be available to meet the need for an additional 30-minute break in addition to prep and lunch. I know it's a lot trickier at the elementary level because of how their schedules work. But my goal here is that, hey, with enough advance notice, workarounds can happen, specials can be shifted. We can make it happen so that everyone gets what they need and they can comfortably express milk at work. That's what I got. Oh, there's one more, sorry. And hey, we also say, when you're done lactating, give a heads up so that we know that we can return you to a schedule. We can return you to QB, right? It's not, the system's not designed so that we're abusing it. But if it's being used, that it's used as needed.
Thank you very much. We, first of all, very much appreciate this proposal, and we want to try to support it. And we're going to just take some time, probably talk to our building principals, try to figure out, like, you know, we run through all the various, like, what happens if, and then be able to have a counter proposal. I don't think it'd be for next time, given just scheduling, but you know, we hear you. We want to be very supportive of this, and we'll put some time and effort into a counter proposal, or I don't know if that's the right word, or to coming back to you with some information.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, because I do want to stand by, like, it is the law, right? It is that a half hour will be given. The goal here is just to make sure that, like, it can be accommodated
Yeah.
in a way that's least disruptive as possible.
Yeah. And supportive to the teacher.
Right,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, we got language for it, and heavens knows the laws change. We're making sure that we are doing right by our members here.
Right.
Can we list this for now as, rather than, like, we may have a counter later, but more of a tentative yes pending discussion with building leaders?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So tentative yes, and more to come with our building leaders. Proposal 54, progressive discipline protocol. Bob and I worked hard on this, and I'm actually really excited about it. I think that we nailed it.
It's always nice when you nail progressive.
Yeah, progressive discipline. So let me just give the gist for people. So progressive discipline started as a conversation of how do we give a series of warnings for minor misconduct that needs correction, and then, like, have a threshold for when it escalates. And as we talked, we were like, that's just the wrong mindset to take to this. And that instead it's really like, what are we trying to do when teachers are struggling? So what we have established in the broadest of strokes here is that a system of progressive discipline that would put the, when a teacher is struggling at the building level, the role of a building leader in addressing that struggle should be completely supportive. Our building leaders should be helping our teachers to grow, helping our teachers to develop the skills that they need, fill in the gaps that they have that are causing that particular situation. And that would be addressing minor non-disciplinary misconduct at the building level. That would include collaborative conversations with a member who's struggling, their ITA representative, the building leader, to discuss the conduct, how it's affecting the overall working of the building. What does the teacher need to be able to, you know, address this conduct and fix it up so that everybody can be on the same page? And if necessary, actually not even if necessary, and to put a document of that conversation in the form of a non-disciplinary counseling memo that just says, this was the problem, this is what we agreed to do to solve the problem, we're going to solve the problem. We also know that sometimes our teachers engage in misconduct that would be considered disciplinary and needs more accountability than a counseling memo and a conversation with your principal. And we felt that in order to really have good, strong, supportive relationships at the building level, building leaders should not also be the people responsible for issuing and holding that accountability in disciplinary incidents. So what this would do for addressing misconduct worthy of discipline, or if a building leader feels that the conduct could be worthy of discipline, that would be referred to human resources, and that would be dealt with at the district level through currently, through the investigations officer, but in whoever sits in that seat as well. And that would be, the member would be supported by union leadership rather than just a building rep. That the incident would be investigated and handled by human resources, more trained in the processes of supporting members in those ways, and not having to be in a direct day-to-day relationship with the teacher and have to come back the next day and help that person do well. There are a lot of other words on the page that Bob and I wrote together over many, many, many meetings, so I'm not going to read them.
Yeah, thank you so much too for all the work your group has put into it. And I guess I just want to be, our team wants to be on the record that this, I feel that this is one of the most important things that we have done so far. There's a lot of great things happening. I don't want to detract from that, but this, when situations arise in the building, and I won't speak for you, Catherine, but this can sometimes be the most disruptive thing that happens to the teacher, to the building, to central office, even to parents and students. So to really have a good system here, I think is going to help both of us. And also, I think what I really want to be on the record for is that we want to embrace the union in terms of helping us, especially early on. I think, 2 years ago, there was too much emphasis on us versus them. And I think over the years, we're getting better at seeing that the union plays a vital role early on to help their members who are struggling. And like I keep saying to some administrators, they can say stuff to their members that we can't, so if you have them in the room and they see you trying to help and be empathetic about the issue, they can then talk to their member and also help in ways that we just can't right now. So it's a really collaborative effort. I feel strongly this is something really good for us, for both union members and buildings. So
Yeah,
thank you very much.
wonderful. I'm always searching for mutual benefit, and I think
Yeah.
that this really is mutually beneficial. So yes, that Jake was asking me if there was some stuff. Yes, congratulations, Jake. I know that this was your baby. Okay, moving on. So the rest of these are items that we brought up last time and that you were going to bring counter proposals for, but then in our agenda, we still kind of had the same things. So I think we just need to talk through some minor details on some of them.
Just the email thing?
Page 19 is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Page 19.
Yeah.
Protect the use of district email for association communications. And the black at the top is what, David added the bold sentence into it. And then Bob, you added some questions. So I'm going to let the two of you talk this out.
Sure. Right. So after we had just a brief moment last week where we kind of had the initial thoughts.
Mhm.
I did come back through and do a little bit of editing. Right. So I added in the phrase non-commercial communication. Right. And just a caveat that all communication or all email use would be in line with the board policy. So 9650.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
So as far as that goes, just kind of, you have some points down there. So 1 and 2 are covered by the board policy, right? It's definitely, we understand that we're going to use the district email, it's foilable, right? It's there, that is absolutely understood. And that, of course, we're using your systems. Yes, you have the right to look at them. We're using your system. We get it. And I'm going to skip point 3 because that's the one where we're going to come back.
Okay.
Okay. But I just wanted to address point 4 super quickly in that we do have our own email systems that we do use. Whenever possible, we communicate to our members and to each other through our personal emails. This would not become a primary mode of communication. It's an incidental mode, right? And I think we can recognize I'm going to call myself out. I have sent union work emails to you and to you and to you, right? Right, like through my school email, because that's where I was. It was there. It was in the service of, hey, there's a problem. We want to meet some solutions. Let's right? So the goal here isn't to make this a primary email method, but incidental use happens. And we want to make sure that our members are protected, because we have seen cases in other places where that use was, that was held against members, right? If a member has a problem, we want them to be able to communicate with us, communicate with you as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that we can reach that resolution. See our last little point on progressive discipline, right? Like,
Yeah.
So that is what this is seeking to do. Now, point 3. We should discuss whether email comms should be developed, read, sent during the course of the workday. I don't think that language is necessary. They're going to happen during the course of the workday. For example, that's Catherine's whole job, right? Or all of us here have a prep period during our day that's not that, during which time it seems perfectly reasonable that if that's what I need to accomplish during my prep period is shoot out an email to Catherine or answer a member's question, yeah, I'm going to do that at that time. Again, understanding that this is not a replacement as the primary vehicle. This is just protection for incidental usage.
Okay. Appreciate the clarifications, and I think maybe with the clarifications, I can come up with some language that'd be mutually acceptable.
Sure.
And, you know, this bears repeating, I guess. Everything is fine until it isn't. So these contracts, we don't need to necessarily look at until there's a problem or a disagreement. And then we go like, what did we mean? So it's just in terms of, you know, getting the right language down to try to encompass all reasonably potential scenarios. And I think with your clarification, we can do that. So.
Great.
So tentative, yes, and you'll bring new language?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, here's another similar vein. David added, or someone added, I don't know who added this. The use of the public address system for announcement of union meetings, which is really a 1-sentence proposal. Adding in that the district will permit the association to use a building's public address system during non-instructional hours to announce the date, time, and location of association meetings. Great.
Good. All right.
Excellent. Look at this. So efficient. So we are back to the protections against AI outsourcing. And I have not made any changes to this since we last talked about this. Last I had that we had on the 7th of March, we had reached kind of a tentative agreement in the committee on the AI portion. There was some question about the language related to the BOCES portion that, Bob, you wanted to check and make sure that that additional sentence that we added did not interfere with any of our agreements with BOCES.
Yeah, and it BOCES can, districts have the ability to send services to BOCES, and if it results the way I understand the law, and I don't want to be practicing for your side, but you know, for what it's worth, if it results in FTE being lost through that district that's participating, that teacher, or it's actually anything. I think we transferred our IT department up a few years ago. They have to be offered jobs first in the BOCES facility. So I feel like this language may be a little restrictive of that and might run afoul of that, but where is it here? I just had it. Oh, there it is. Do you mind just saying something like we'll follow education law if this were to happen?
So we would say transfer of programs or personnel.
That we could say that enhanced student programming
Well, I think
must
there's
be
two
done.
things. I think there's the enhancing the student programming and maybe a separate sentence. So transfer of programs or personnel should enhance student programming. period, and then do you want to propose a new sentence that gets at that piece?
Yeah, we could just say must be done in accordance with education law.
Great.
Okay.
Do we want to cite which one?
No.
Do you want to cite which one, Tammy?
Yeah. When we do the technical revisions at the end, we could throw it in. Yeah.
So we are in agreement on this?
I don't know about, I apologize. I don't have a total answer on the use of AI and so I'm gonna ask for a little grace on that one and be able to come back next time on that.
I'm wondering, I mean, like you said that and I made eye contact with Zach because he's he's the one who we always have the AI.
I
copy.
am, yeah.
You are AI.
That explains some. We'll be able to have a broader discussion of that next time if,
Okay.
yeah.
But yes, on A and B.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we offered a revision to the, we called it something different over here, our protections against reprisal for teaching controversial subjects, or the academic freedom clause. These, I believe, are our latest revisions, and you are going to come back with some possible revisions?
Yeah, I had to ask for access to this one, so
Right.
I
Yeah.
haven't been able to add to it. Do you just give us a moment to
Do
read your?
you, do you want to like take it outside and talk about it, or do you want to just have me stop talking?
I think maybe we'll just read it, and then if anyone wants to step out. they can.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. We're gonna step out for just a few minutes.
Go ahead.
All right.
Have fun, yeah.
People in the gallery, just so you, oh, we went.
Thank you for giving us a few moments. We just have a little further discussion. And the second sentence, they are guaranteed the rights of academic freedom and individual conscience and expression. That's in your current contract. And when selecting materials for the classroom and curriculum, we're a little concerned because there may be times where we have to say to teachers, we need you to teach this or this or this, right? And so there's that issue. And then we want to protect against that situation where I think I sort of referenced it last time, where like everyone in this room is in agreement that what the teacher is utilizing for their individual conscience and expression is antithetical to like what we believe in here in Ithaca. And we want to be able to, we want to be able to have that discussion when it happens.
Well, I think that the reason we have a contract is so that we have some guidelines when things like that happen. This, I think, gives some pretty clear points around like, if the district says you have to teach it, it should be because it's district approved curriculum or in line with state standards.
But it's just a clear thing. It's saying it needs to be aligned with aligned with district approved curriculum. The contentious issue could be like, let's say we're implementing a specific reading program and you were like, my conscience says I actually need to teach it this whole different way, which we understand, but also that kind of handcuffs us.
And when a building leader called me with that same scenario,
Sure.
I said, well, have a conversation with the teacher. That seems like a perfect place to have to have the progressive discipline protocol again, right? Have a conversation with the teacher. This is what's happening. This is what I need. This is why we need to do something different. Let's do something different. Right? Teacher then signs off. Yes, I understand doing something different. They either do something different. Great. We've had a supportive conversation. Progressive supportive discipline at the building level has worked. Or they walk out and go, I know I signed that, but I'm not doing that. They do the thing, then it's insubordination. It's possibly disciplinary. We have you and I have a conference with them and have the same conversation. I think that they can work in concert with each other. And I think that this gives the room to hold people accountable for building leaders and district leadership to have the oversight, but isn't like super, super prescriptive.
So, but isn't there like understanding we're talking hypotheticals and worst case scenarios? The challenge we run into is if a teacher says, well, I was just teaching along the lines of my conscience and in making these choices, but and they can make a tangential argument saying here's how it relates to district approved curriculum. Ultimately, the district is still responsible for what they're doing. And then it's going to come down to like, how aligned was it? So we're just trying to say, could we figure out a way to make some of those delineations clearer?
Except I wonder, like, I am a firm believer in doing your work from a mindset of abundance and a mindset of optimism and focusing on what could go right rather than what could go wrong, while also having, the systems in place for if something goes wrong, how to remedy it. And I worry that putting too much of that level of protection onto it, especially with a currently pretty new staff. I mean, almost half our people are not yet tenured. I worry that getting too prescriptive and too worst case scenario in the language is actually going to stifle innovation, creativity, heartfelt teaching, and just really like cause a lot of compliance that may not actually be what we want either.
But I don't think we're against this proposal at all. It's just a matter of trying to make it clearer to folks that there will be times when there's curriculum that a district is going to ask you to do. So I just more like, can we land the plane somewhere in between these things?
So
David's got a possible sentence.
I'd like to propose an additional sentence at the start that would say, while we recognize that there may be instances when the district must impose curriculum, we hold that in all other instances, teachers have the right and pick it up from there.
Does that work?
I think it's better. No, I feel like I'm being a real curmudgeon here, but yeah,
So here's-
yeah.
So I appreciate coming from the approach of abundance and a shared understanding that we want to collaborate. We're hearing great feedback from some of the curriculum we've adopted that has opened up bandwidth for other parts of the teaching craft. And so I'm wondering if we just need a little bit more time I'd like that sentence, but I think for this to get it right is important.
Mhm.
And I would love to revisit this.
And perhaps some of your members have more ideas along those lines too.
I was going to
Like-
say, I mean, Mary, you and David seem to work well together, and this seems to be, are you both willing
That's
to?
what,
Would
yeah.
you like to, so we would have to have a proposal then ready for April 7th.
Yeah.
So sometime next week, we'd have to sit down and make it happen.
Yep.
We'll go with that.
Yep. Is everybody?
I think, yeah,
Are you
I
okay
think
with that?
there's, maybe I'm hearing two things to focus on as well. One is like curricular and how that works, right? But also, and I'm happy to help as well. And maybe ITA think about this too, because you're in the classroom. Can you envision a scenario where you would want to stop a teacher from teaching what they're teaching? Like, and then if we
Yes.
can,
Yes,
right.
I can envision any.
So, and so how do we move forward with, when it's not, might not necessarily be disciplinable, right? Because there are situations where it could be, they could have a lot of individual consciousness, and we've used the term guaranteed the right to utilize their individual consciousness. And I can see a situation where they're really skirting it and causing great disruption and harm to
Right, and like
kids.
afforded and guaranteed have different meanings.
Yeah. So that, I just think along those lines, and then when we come together, we can
Yeah.
dive deeper.
I believe that Mary and David will figure out
All right.
exactly the right words.
Sure, and I'll move that I touch base with my team and reach out to my membership. Just, solicit some feedback, and maybe I will trust that you will talk to your team as well, so that we can both come to the table with that input and ready to put it down onto paper.
It would probably also be good to get some input from building leaders.
Yes.
At all different levels, right? Because like the input from, because they're the people who are gonna get the phone call.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When are we next? We're together.
Next meeting is April 10th.
Okay, so we have
We're taking a
2 weeks.
week off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
One whole week off
Bold.
from this, a bold move for us. Yeah, so April 7th is the Monday, and that gives us time, a couple days to get our large team together to go over things, so. Okay, on page 27, guaranteed workspaces for all teachers, and I apologize that this was like maybe not the original. This is the one you saw last week, but maybe not the original version that you saw, but this is the one that we had in here last week that you were going to take a look at. And I'm interested to hear.
We've been making really good progress tonight, but this is one of them that we're really afraid to move further. We can't guarantee this in all of our buildings, and we're worried about, overextending in terms of capital projects and stuff like that. So, with great respect, and we can continue to talk outside of negotiations, try to figure out in individual cases, how can we get, the music lessons not on the stage, for example, that type of thing.
I appreciate the frankness, and we have until I think our next session to revision things. So that may cause some of our people to completely revamp it, and we may see it again or we may not, but I appreciate that. And also understand that the number of students at a building kind of dictates how you can use the space. And some of our schools have lots and lots and lots of students.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and then the last of our, second draft revised thinking, collaborative master scheduling around people knowing their schedules before they go on summer vacation. And if they find out after going on summer vacation, that there be some paid PD time for that.
I know that, oh, go right ahead. I was just gonna say June 30th is, we all appreciate so much, like teachers want to get home and have some well-deserved time in the summer to recuperate and get ready for next year. But June 30th, a lot of times the scheduling just isn't ready to go at that point. So I just put that out, and I'll turn it over to Mary.
Yeah, so here's what I want to add. The scheduling, I feel that we can make progress on that, and we are. We are meeting with building leaders in April to start draft schedules and thinking across all buildings, so there's commonalities. Here, the if we play out before June 30th, so when there's a vacancy, it's
Right.
caused by something. So for us to guarantee that it would be by June 30th, we would need to somehow outline that members tell us of their plans no later than a certain date, so that there's a cost. That's how I'm seeing it. If you play- Yeah.
So we haven't brought them back up, but we do have, because they're kind of caught up in all the salary stuff.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple of proposals that would offer some small incentive for like super proactive communication of those types of things, which could help, which were intended to help with the salary situation. So I do think that there is a way for that to happen. I do think there's a way to revise this to have it be like reasonable assurance as opposed to like ironclad, nothing can ever change.
Mhm.
And really what we're asking for is that if a teacher finds out in like, I mean, we're like, for many, it's just like, you're going to be teaching 3rd grade next year. Yay. That's all you needed to know.
Mhm.
You know, if you find out in August that you're moving from, you know, from Regents level biology for 9th and 10th graders to AP biology, because that's just, we had a vacancy, that person couldn't do AP, but they can do early, and you're great, we want you to do AP, will you do AP? 2 extra paid days to make that transition is really like what we're asking for. And if that's a co-teaching assignment, 2 days, both the educators involved would have 2 days to get on the same page before the start of the school year, or 2 professional days that can be used at any time during the school year.
And so right now it just says, the current contract says, as soon as practicable and under normal circumstances, not later than June 30th, returning teachers will be notified in writing of their tentative assignments.
Yeah.
Right. So you have that language.
So
Like-
we could even revert back to that language and then add the piece of if that can't be done
Mhm.
and they find out after June 30th. It's really the collaborative, it's the collaborative time for us.
So what happens if, like, I guess you're
Yeah,
saying there
it's-
each,
It's
yeah.
less about the commitment to that's what you're doing and more about the additional time to prep, recognizing that the late notification
Okay.
causes you to make that mindset shift to prep a different class. So if it's a couple days before school starts, a little bit of extra prep helps that person hit the ground running.
Right, so the problem we're trying to solve is paid planning time for either new co-teaching partnership or a new class assignment.
Yes. Yes, I am often asking, what is the problem we're trying to solve? The
Yeah.
problem that we're trying to solve is paid prep for a late summer notification that what you expected to teach is going to change. There's also the piece of, you know, I worked with Caitlin Redfield, wonderful former reading teacher, who regularly said, I would love to take I would love to do curriculum writing professional development over the summer, but I don't know if I'm going to be supporting 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. So what am I going to write? I don't want to come in and write curriculum that I can't actually use. If I come in and write 7th, assuming I'm going to teach 7th, and then I go teach 6th, then I can't use it.
Mhm.
Right. So that held her back from signing up for those professional development
Mhm.
opportunities where, you know, we know that those, especially like the anti-marginalization curriculum writing, lengthy, really, really good stuff, but it's hard to put that much time and energy into something that can't necessarily be practicable and that you can't necessarily use. No professional wants to be writing unit plans, imaginary unit plans like we're back in undergrad.
Mhm.
So 2 problems.
Yeah, I wonder if there's also a date later. I understand the rationale behind June 30th. I also wonder if there's a later date that might, you
I
know,
mean, the problem with a later date,
that might trigger the paid time.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with a later date is that we're 10-month employees, right? Like you all are 12-month employees, so like you make decisions in July all the time. I'm a kind of de facto 12-month. I make decisions in July all the time, but like Danielle, who was here today, works an entirely different full-time job in the summer. So, you know, for her principal to call her up in the middle of the summer and be like, hey, by the way, she's not technically working at that time. So
Yeah, I just mean like, is there like maybe, sounds like we probably need to talk about this one more also on our side, but I think we would struggle to be able to do this exactly like this, but I think are open to solving the problem and thinking about it.
Yeah. The follow-up specifically I want to have as I'm thinking about this is for secondary and when children are making course selections and we're finalizing course loads at the high school, for example, is this a realistic timeline and maybe you've already gotten the input from some of the school counselors. I haven't talked to them or specifically on the state or administration. So I just want to follow up with that. I think the date we could look at, and also right now, it's not whether folks are able to access it or not based on life and that in the 10-month contract, we have and are very grateful for the large number of educators who work project innovation during the summer. We're offering paid PD for time. If we're trying to solve the problem of them knowing, there's knowing, and then what that looks like and who's accessing it and why, whether it's in person, asynchronous, because I think the flexibility outlined in here with the 2 days is.
I'm gonna put two of my colleagues kind of on the spot here. Gary, are you curriculum committee at LACS or just Aurora? Aurora, you help with curriculum and scheduling at LACS, right? Could you join us for a moment? Just from the secondary perspective and
I have a very.
right, and LACS is I mean, when we're talking about course selection and finalizing like nuanced details and yeah, that's another piece too. So Aurora, I'm interested in your input on from like that scheduling of a whole bunch of classes where pretty much every class is unique. Is June 30th even possible?
So at LACS, our students sign up for classes in the spring. So we all have to know what classes we are teaching so our students can sign up for their classes. And we try to have all of that, like we need to have our courses in before then. So we should know what our schedule is. And we all leave for the summer thinking we know what our schedule is. And then of course things change because things change. And I think that what's beautiful about this proposal is like, everyone wants to feel like they know what's happening and then things change as they do. But at least this way you're not left with nothing, no way to prepare. So when you find out that actually you're co-teaching, it's like, okay, great. Now we have some time to prepare. Like that, I think is what's great about this. It's not punishing anybody for changes that naturally occur, which they always do. But at LACS, we do always leave for the summer believing we know what we're teaching. And
Yeah.
if it changes, then you get 2 days. And I love that it could be 2 days. Like one could be in the summer and one could be, you know, halfway through the year because it's like, okay, we have a semester's worth of planning and then we're going to do another semester. Like I think the flexibility of the proposal is really great there.
So what part of that challenge is illustrated in your answer is if we kind of know, and I know from talking to the folks who do the high school schedule, but we could definitely talk here as well. There's a lot of changes. I know the high school schedule getting changed and figured out over the summer as well. So then the question becomes, what percentage of our teachers is this impacted by? And the answer is if the answer is something over 50% of the teachers, then it's ultimately a request for almost all of our teachers in that school to have some extra professional development days to prepare. Or like, so that's where we just need to understand the scope of this to be able to commit.
Lauren, as an IHS department leader, I'm interested in your thoughts. I'm sorry, this is very non-traditional, but this is the way that I love to do these things, so it's all right.
I was thinking about actually the end of last summer and I think historically it seems to be the numbers fairly small and generally fairly unpredictable the way things are set up now. It made me think though about the importance of things like deadlines and for example, folks like guidance counselors, knowing that the district leadership would have their back and thus department leaders' backs to say, here's the hard and fast deadline for course signups, for course switches after the fact. And unless there's truly an extenuating circumstance that goes to the principal, perhaps, we are not changing these, period. It is what it is. Because last summer was a banner year in the English department. I was fielding phone calls and texts and emails that were frantic all the way up through the end of August until the week we actually came back. We did not have finalized schedules for my teachers until that point, the week that teachers returned. And I'm as a 10-month employee, despite being a department leader, right, I don't get paid over the summer either, right? So here I am with my 14-year-old and my 12-year-old trying to go to the grandma's, you know, and hey, Lauren, can you tell me? Sorry, I can't. That's outrageous. You know, like it just turns into, so permission to say no, I think is part of this conversation.
And then there's also some implications of mid-year changes, right? When people move during the year. Now, usually we do, I know you and I worked on stuff where we give people time to work on stuff. It's challenging, particularly when there's high need areas where we need folks in the school to give them the day. Anyway, that's a whole nother mechanism we'd have to examine.
So, but I think establishing something makes it so much easier when so there are a whole bunch of people who might fall into this category. Some of them may say, hey, I need some prep time, and they may call me, and then we're like case by case doling out what we think is fair based on when they got the thing. And inevitably, someone who didn't know that they could ask for it doesn't get it. Then we're setting up inequities all over the place. And I think that this is also, like, you know, Lauren was kind of speaking to it. There will inevitably be changes. No schedule will ever be perfect. And having a deadline with an accountability piece may be the thing. It's kind of that, like, if we don't make a rule that you have to follow it, then nobody's going to follow the rule. If we make the rule, it's more likely that people will follow the rule. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's a piece of this could be the impetus to create the systems that support the June 30th date.
And the point, as a former building leader, where I found taking those phone calls were resignations of educators in July that would reshift everything around Labor Day weekend. And so if we can couple that to set it up for success, engineer success here with, of course, life happens.
Yeah.
Educators giving their colleagues their best, you know, their best
I think
guess, and then that couple, because you're saying the changes weren't from staffing, but were from students' course selections, Lauren, if I understood.
This past year
Part of the-
especially, yeah, but I mean, I totally hear you, right? We've had a lot of turnover. Yeah, and that's hard.
I would
right?
say that, yeah.
And I would go back to Catherine's example earlier, you know, our RH bio in, you know, grade 9 is very different from AP bio, same in English, right? Like, yeah.
And I guess there's also a difference between saying, you know, you're teaching this English elective all of a sudden versus a 3rd grade teacher is switching to 4th grade. One of them is an entirely new curriculum, and one of them is an entirely new curriculum for one period. Like just the breadth of what. So there's a scale issue as well. Just saying that, not making, right? No, okay.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I'm just saying the number of like if you're switching a grade, you're gonna have prep for reading, you're gonna prep for.
If you're switching a grade in elementary in the ICSD now, you're going from 3rd grade math, and third grade ELA curriculum, which have curricular materials, to fourth grade, which still have curricular materials. Whereas if you are going, especially in middle school and high school as well, you're creating, and I mean, David with German.
Yeah,
Last year. I shifted.
Take a mic.
yeah.
But last year I got shifted with no transition time from doing sixth, seventh, eighth grade German to sixth, seventh, eighth grade German and level 3 honors. A course I've never taught with no time to prepare. I walked into the classroom the next day and started going for it. Right? Like, it would have been really
Can I say
awesome to have a little time to like figure out what is level 3H, what is the material that I have, right? And Sabina, bless her soul, worked with me, gave me what she had, but it wasn't my curriculum. I needed to adapt it for myself.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing that.
Right, so like,
that.
yeah, like,
And
Yeah,
but there isn't really a system to, I think, like,
yeah.
we don't have a system where we say, hey, that shift happened and you need like a hot second to get ready.
right, because I think we can all agree that 1 day or 2 days is not enough to prepare one course or an entire year of curriculum in elementary, right? It's like, it's obviously inadequate in both cases, but it's something rather than nothing, which we have right now.
Yeah.
I am very interested, based on this entire conversation, with what y'all are gonna come up with. And I suggest, I don't off the top of my head know what number proposal it is, but there is a proposal for an incentive for early notification of resignation. And I think it was really just like a small 6-day buyback. That I would just urge you to take a look at that, because I think that could help with the late notifications. I mean, also life happens and sometimes people recognize that they're not going to be able to do a thing that they thought they could do. But there are some ways to.
Do you have an estimate on the number of impacted teachers per year?
I don't. I mean, I could do like a pulse survey of like, has this been affected? What would help? But it's just going to be like, it's going to be a voluntary sampling. I don't have.
Ultimately, we have to understand what the financial commitment is, which gets us back to our whole finance. So there's also this piece of where does this, like, I understand that there's a need for a system, but there's also this piece of if this, just hold on.
I mean,
Just hold on. Just if it's 200 teachers at 2 days each, that's a significant amount versus if it's, and we can all do the research too, but I'm just saying, but if it's 20, that's a whole, so that's what we'd have to look at.
we don't keep like a comprehensive record of the resignation date. Like I can't.
And it's not always going to be from resignations. Also, it's going to also be from course sign up. So there's even that is tricky. Yeah. We do have resignation info, but
That
yeah,
might
okay.
At least give you a ballpark.
I think we'll all have to do some more homework on it then.
Yeah, what's throwing me is the mental model I'm using when I read collaborative master scheduling. I'm thinking, okay, we have to have checkpoints in April and May and students giving them course selections. So that's something we can do outside of the contract to help ensure things.
Yeah.
And then there's paid professional development for your content area and teaming.
Yeah, and I think maybe even just change, like ignore the name because it's really looking at salary and assignment notification.
Yeah.
Right, like that's the schedule.
Yeah.
We can rename it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tammy just, do you want to say it or do you want me to amplify you?
I mean, what's best for kids is to have their teachers prepared with well thought of curriculum on the first day of school. That's really all this is addressing.
Yeah, I think we agree. I don't
Disagree.
thank you though. That's helpful.
So I think, again, you're gonna come up with something new. You're gonna bring it back and we're gonna talk about it some more.
I wonder if there's another way to just sort of brainstorm. I wonder if there's a whole nother philosophical way to come out at this that actually does get back to collaborative master scheduling that might be more a collaborative process that keeps things on track so people have a general idea of what's happening. We'll think about it. I'm talking too much out loud.
What are you thinking? Tell me.
No, just like, so you're talking about scheduling issues. So because this is what I think we're seeing is a manifestation of tricky problems that happen all across the district, and like everything from resignations to students moving into an elementary school to who signed up for what courses at the high school, right? So I wonder if there's a better system would actually come out of not necessarily, because this is the downstream solution, right? This is just saying, let's solve it by doing this, which might need to happen. But upstream of that, there's probably 5 or 6 interventions that we could think about that would help us from getting to this happening as often, which then makes it a more palatable proposal for the district to be able to have.
That's what I was.
That's what I'm getting at.
That's what I was gonna say. Focus on the upstream solution to not have to use this very often. Because for us, this is one of those proposals that's like, well, if everything's working well, then we never have
Yeah.
to use this. But if things fall apart, at least there's something. So I think that it's a yes and. Okay.
Just foreshadowing though, if we're able to reach an agreement, would probably start in the second year of the contract, because to implement anything now, it's like, yeah. So just foreshadowing that, okay.
It would be very hard to do that. So that brings us to an entirely different topic. That I guess we can first I'll tell you my thinking, and then we can decide if we need to take a break or if we want to just like dive right in. So we have a number of proposals related from both sides, related to the length of a school day, the structure of a teacher's school day, the use of Wednesday meetings. And as I was going through trying to like, which proposals of ours do I want to prioritize? How do they fit in with theirs? I realized that it would be helpful, I think, for us to have a very zoomed out conversation about what are the problems we're trying to solve, what are the goals, and all of that kind of stuff. And I put together a presentation that really just goes through like, what are the proposed ideas? What are some discussion questions? What does the CBA currently say? What does NICEAD currently say? That I think we might be able to spend the rest of our time having more of a conversation about what are we hoping to do that might help us all write some better proposals or counters or get to a better direction.
Sounds
Does that
good.
good?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and do we want to just jump right into it, or do we want to take a quick break?
I think we should just jump right into it because
What time is it?
we're fast,
7 o'clock.
fast running.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
7:09, let's dive in.
Display our slides, and do you mind if I just say next? Here. Okay, cool. I just don't bring my computer. I don't bring my computer and my phones here because like I find it way too distracting, so. Not because I'm like a celebrity.
My name is Brian Swinby.
Okay, so why don't you go to the overview? Slide 2, Ryan. And you all have the notes. It's page 31 in your packets. It's more for the folks in the gallery and the people at home. Yes, I do. So as I was going through all of the various proposals, a couple of big topics came up as topics that could warrant more discussion. So the length of a teacher's day as defined by the CBA already, and the practice of what length of a teacher's day actually looks like. Instructional minutes requirement as outlined by NICEAD. What are the professional responsibilities of a teacher aside from the actual direct delivery of instruction in front of children? How is non-teaching time in a teacher's day structured and organized? We currently, despite being 10, 11 years into being an inclusion school, have no collective bargaining agreement language around inclusion assignments and planning for inclusion assignments. And then Wednesday meetings. I ended up taking professional development off because I think that it is related, but not necessarily super closely related. So just moving us ahead. Yeah, it's okay. Got the length. So starting with the length of a teacher's day, and you can just go ahead. So currently we have a couple of ICSD proposals. ICSD submitted at almost 2 months ago at this point, a proposal to define the instructional day and add time to the instructional day, proposing that the elementary day have a hard start and end time, which is like a revolutionary thing for the ICSD. That the elementary day would start at 8 and end at 2:30, making the teacher day 6 hours and 50 minutes. And that the middle and high school day start at 9 and end at 3:45, these being the instructional days, making the middle school day 7 hours and 5 minutes and the high school day 6 hours and 55 minutes. And then we also have 2 pre-K programs with 2 different schedules, which are also different. I put it here in the wrong place, but just to know, pre-K is also something that needs to be considered because their schedules are also different. So it's not just elementary,
Right,
middle,
just a-
high
yeah.
school. We also have to consider pre-K. So looking at 4 different structures of schedules. And then we had an ITA proposal that would standardize the report to work time before instructional time, because right now it's not the same. It depends on where you work, how much earlier before student instructional time you report, and what is expected of you when you do report. So some of the questions and discussion points that we may want to get into, and you all can say if we want to do it slide by slide or just do it as a big conversation at the end. So what are the problems that changing the instructional day would solve, and how? What would be the impact on other units? How would these changes to instructional day affect bus drivers and cafeteria workers and things like that? What would be the impact on the community? Not only after school programs, but like Armstrong School of Dance that has a dance class that starts at a very specific time because that's when the buses can get there. And then how would this impact the salary discussion, recognizing that especially that elementary proposal is a pretty significant chunk of time that when I did rough napkin math, was like the equivalent of 15 days over the course of a year. So do we want to take these on now, or do we want to talk about it all at the end?
I'm just going to foreshadow that this probably will take effect year 2 or 3.
Okay.
Just, I mean, there's no way to get all of this done for September 1st, 20.
Right, but we're gonna ratify a contract first. So we would have to,
Yeah.
so we would be making decisions for the future.
No, I hear you, but just to put that out there. I don't know, Zach, Mary, do you have a preference of just chatting about each slide or going through the presentation?
I don't have a strong preference. Are you all,
Do you want to know what the big picture conversation? Yeah, so at the end, last slide, I know what you're thinking. Is at slide 37, or not 30, page 37, last slide. Yeah, so we have an opportunity to define our organizational values and transform teacher working conditions in a way that's mutually beneficial for students, teachers, and administrators in talking about the length and structure of a day. But what do we need to focus on? What are the values that we're trying, what are the problems we're trying to solve, and what are we trying to value in those conversations?
So it seems like there's a couple of threads within this that are in a negotiation fraught with feelings and different ideas. There's the financial compensation that this would entail, right? Obviously, we're also having a whole nother separate financial conversation, right? So it's hard to sort of enter into conversation with both those things at the same time. But conceptually, I think we can have a conversation on common goals and objectives that both parties can agree upon. I mean, I think that could be a good foundational.
I
thing
think
for
that's
the
what
evening.
I'm thinking too, and I'm still not convinced that we're ever going to be able to solve the salary question without talking about this stuff anyway. So like, and we haven't solved the salary question in
Right.
5 meetings. So what if we just started talking about the other stuff?
Right. So, but then the question is like, can we have this knowing that we have a sidebar or there's a giant second conversation about salary? Like, can we do that in a way? Or are we going to just end up in this circular, like, yeah, cool. Well, if you change my salary, then I'll do that. Like, there's a push and pull there that can make it a challenge.
The ball.
Say your thing.
Yeah, I mean, so when I think about salary, now this is just me and I know other folks have different thoughts, but it's kind of like the bow on the package, right? The definition of the workday, what are my conditions? How long do I have to be there?
Sure.
These are all the things these are all the core of the CBA. The salary is the part where we go on top and say, here you go. All of this means this money.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's depending on, I think a lot about like practical applications. Like if you're a person who grocery shops with a really, really strict budget, that the groceries in my
Yeah.
cart cannot exceed this much money, you shop in a different way than if you say, I need to get a bunch of things, and it's going to cost money at the end. And you look at the price tags and like make informed decisions, but it's really just what are you valuing? And I think that we've established that we need to talk about both. So I don't think we can hold off other conversations.
So I think it would be appropriate for us to, at the very least, listen to your thoughts to some of the answers to these questions and where you're at on it. Happy to do that if that's helpful to you.
Does it make sense to go through like the different pieces of like, what are the proposals and what are the questions? Or do you just want the big picture? Like, because I have notes on this and I also can go through each of the slides because it's all kind of part of how my brain works.
I think you go through the slides.
Okay.
You put time and effort into it, so
Cool.
be good to listen and look.
Let's see. Can you 1, 2, 3, 4, slide 5. No, before instructional minutes. Oops. Yeah, current CBS. Okay. Yeah, there we go.
And do you want us to ask questions if they come up, or would you rather just go?
Yes, and
Okay.
this is like the current CBA, but it's also kind of the current practice. And I was working, and like I recognize that what it says in the CBA is not necessarily always what the people on in the ground experience. So some of my colleagues have helped fill this in. But right now, just for like people, the folks at home, and kind of making sure that everybody's on the same page. So currently, our K-5 educators report 20 minutes before the start of the instructional day. The instructional day begins at 8. So they are required to be in their classrooms or on campus by 7:40, and students can begin arriving to classrooms at 7:40. So between 7:40 and 8 for elementary classroom teachers, there is a supervisory requirement. Many do a soft start, kids have breakfast, but the kids are in your room, you can't go run off copies, that kind of thing. Instructional day begins at 8, ends at 2. Teachers leave after buses, kind of, because there's no defined end of the day. And the length of that teacher's day from 7:40 to 2 is 6 hours and 20 minutes. At the middle school, teachers report 20 minutes before the start of the instructional day, but they are not required to be in their room, and that is non-supervisory time. They can connect with colleagues, run off copies, do whatever they need to do. Instructional day begins at 9. Dismissal is at 3:30. Again, they have a leave after the last bell because it is undefined. And that for our teachers there is a 6 hour and 50 minute day. So different length of time than our elementary. Then at IHS and LACS, they are contractually the same, but in practice different. Teachers report 10 minutes before the start of the day in a non-supervisory capacity. Period 1 begins at 9. IHS dismisses at 3:40. LACS dismisses at 3:30. Teachers leave after the last bell. So their length of time, I can't look at it. I can't see it right here, but it is not the same as elementary or middle, and it's not the same as one another. We can move on. So instructional minutes is also a piece of this. We know that NICED changed the number of required minutes for students to be in instructional time somewhere during the last 6 years, kind of immediately before the pandemic. And we were trying to work on that, and then the pandemic hit. So here we are. So NICED standards for K through 6, that there's this like 900 hours for K6 and 990 hours for 7 through 12. And that's based on a 180 minimum days, 300 minutes a day. We currently run a student schedule longer than 180 minutes or 180 days a year, 182, 183. So we actually, by our calculations, are sometimes tight, but that those extra days do help us ensure that we meet those instructional minutes. So of these hours, lunchtime does not count towards instructional minutes. Transition time between classes does not, in secondary, does not count for instructional minutes. And recess can count as instructional minutes if it is supervised by a physical educator. But generally, our recesses at elementary school are not supervised by physical educators and therefore are not counting as instructional minutes.
Correct, in the contract.
Because it is in the contract that they cannot. Exactly. Exactly.
They are.
Yes, and they are not because it is in the contract. Okay, moving on. So, oh my goodness, what was this? Just go one more.
That was well done. Be so happy.
I tried really hard. It's really a lot of Jake's work.
Jake.
So we currently have some proposals around that. ICSD length of day proposal would add instructional time, but at differing amounts for the different segments of the ITA membership. We can all kind of see how the proposal of 30 minutes at elementary, clear how we get more instructional time there. I believe the IHS proposal was like 5 extra minutes.
It's the secondary day goes to 3:45.
Yeah, so 5 extra days at IHS. I'm not really sure how we're getting great value added on instructional minutes. If at 5 minutes a day.
Seconds on classes. Like,
Yeah, less than a minute on classes is, just a thing, just asking what is the problem we're trying to solve and how are we trying to solve it? ITA has some proposals to add more preparation time, which depending on how we handle that could drastically adjust instructional minutes. And we also have a proposal for a 40-minute lunch, which also would affect instructional minutes. So really questions, are we currently reaching instructional minutes at every school? And if not, where and by how much should be taken into account? We've already talked about what can and can't be counted as instructional minutes, but I'm not sure that we've exhausted the topic. A really deep philosophical question about what is an appropriate length of non-instructional time for kids to have in a school day. And like how closely packed together are we, just back-to-back instruction for long swaths of time just to meet instructional minutes without, good substantial breaks because we have to do that. We recognize that we have a short school day. And then how do other districts flex time to gain instructional minutes would be an interesting question to bring in here. Anything anyone wants to say before we go on?
I want to answer the question, are we currently reaching instructional minutes? Yes.
Good.
If there's a financial implication if we do not meet the instructional minutes with our foundation aid and our state funding. So I want to give a shout out to Lynn Klankowski, who monitors that and calculates it and gives us that feedback loop. So and because this is community members might be watching, that's one of the reasons lunch and recess prior to the pandemic was 2020 for those instructional minute needs. During the pandemic, with the need to being outside, I should say high pandemic, people are still getting COVID, the need to be outside, and the spacing that was valued, those time periods increased across elementary schools. And when we came together this summer for collaborative scheduling, we saw that discrepancy and righted it because in order to be in line with the instructional minutes. So that's one component for elementary. I think it would be great to have Lynn talk about this more, whether it's offline at another, between us on the talking points on where she sees leverage, what can be shifted, what she's seen from other districts. And then I do want to talk about the appropriate length of non-instructional time. I am very grateful to educators who do a lot of instruction with a great deal of intention, and some of those are not in the classroom. So thinking about field studies and the use of that, thinking about instructional strategies that provide movement, which people are doing. And I think that's, I want to acknowledge the work that people are doing right now, educators are doing right now in our district for number 3.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's hard about a CBA, especially one that's 6 years old, is when the practices outlined in the CBA don't reflect the actual practices and vision. Right. So like we have the opportunity because we're all here doing this. Go ahead. Thank you. So we have some questions about professional responsibilities. I think we need to look at the graphic for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that feels like my life when I was in the class. It still feels like my life, but so currently I did the best I could to kind of sum up the professional duties as outlined by the CBA. So elementary classroom teachers, because we also have acknowledged that our CBA does not do a good job of defining the work of non-classroom teachers, and even doesn't really do a great job of defining the work of elementary classroom teachers. You read it and it's like, okay, I understand what a secondary subject area teacher should do, but otherwise it's a little gray. So elementary responsible for all subject instruction with the exception of a 30-minute lunch and a 30-minute planning period. They have that 20 minutes of supervision. Secondary are responsible for 5 classes of potentially varied subjects and 1 supervisory duty, as well as if the school uses a home base or other similar SEL support classes. There is not anything in the contract currently about co-planning time for inclusion assignments, and it is very gray of what the responsibility is here, and there are no codified time limits for RSPs. Those are often dictated by IEPs, which dictate what a student deserves, but there's no codified limits on what is a teacher's day in those fields. And Jill's nodding because Jill's been an RSP and knows how that goes. Go ahead. So we have a bunch of proposals that kind of get at this. ITA put in a proposal to enshrine the right to switch off and a proposal to define appropriate use of prep time. ICSD put in a proposal to define professional duties, a proposal to enshrine that professional duties may need to be done outside of contract hours. And there's a proposal floating around there from ICSD to eliminate team time in the middle school. So some of the questions that popped into my mind are, what are the pros and cons of defining those myriad professional responsibilities of a teacher beyond direct instruction? And I can see lots on both columns. How does our inclusion model contribute to a teacher's need for time to work at work? What are the implications of, what is a reasonable expectation of work outside of the workday? And what are the implications of codifying those expectations? When is it fair as a teacher to say enough is enough in a profession where the work is never done? And what could this mean for discipline if teachers don't or can't do it all? I'll come up with those kinds of questions in my mind. Any thoughts, feelings before we move on? Okay, go ahead. Collaborative time as I said, inclusion school district with no inclusion language in our contract. There's currently no codified collaborative time in elementary or high school. There's currently 1 period daily for team meetings at middle school. Go ahead. So ITA put forward a proposal to define minimum collaborative prep periods for all inclusion assignments. We also put forward a proposal to add testing and case management time for SPED teachers and RSPs. We put forward a proposal to ensure 2 prep periods for all teachers, and ICSD put forward a proposal to to repurpose team time in the middle schools. So some of these are very similar to the professional duties conversations, and it is worth noting that some districts do extend their professional day beyond the instructional day to be able to have more collaborative time, which brings me to the last topic, which is Wednesday meetings. Go ahead. Not our Wednesday meeting. That was just a different random meeting.
What school is that?
It was just people at a meeting.
Looks-
Guys.
It looks like AI.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It looks like it was in a hotel conference room, let's be real. Okay. So currently, we have meetings every Wednesday. On the first and third Wednesdays of the month, teachers meet for 60 minutes after school. There is a 50-minute staff meeting or a faculty meeting, depending on who you ask, or some people call this a whole group PLC. The names are murky. There is also 10 minutes of ITA time afforded at each of these 60-minute meetings. And while the purpose of these is not contractually codified, the reality is that this is where the whole teaching staff comes together, announcements are made, whole school initiatives are worked on. Sometimes there's some professional development happening there, and it's really like stuff for the whole group. The second and fourth Wednesdays are 90 minutes after school for PLC time. The purpose being collaborative cycles of professional learning and inquiry. And for many of our colleagues, especially our colleagues at elementary school in inclusion assignments on more than 1 grade level, this is the co-planning time. This is where all of the collaborative co-planning to support students' needs is happening, often in teams. And then we have this 5th Wednesday. There's typically 2 or 3 of them a year. When the calendar falls that way. That is also an additional PLC meeting of 90 minutes after school and can also be used. So the 2nd and 4th are really at teacher discretion, and the 5th can be used for district PLC. So we'll have all of the art teachers come together for 90 minutes 2 or 3 times a year. All of the phys ed teachers come together across the district. Soon, all of the special educators will be coming together to have. My special educators are really, really excited about this for those PLCs. So our Wednesday time is used for many, many, many things, many different things of various levels of value to many members. You can go ahead. So currently the ITA has a proposal for Wednesday meetings that would make the time consistent. So all Wednesday meetings being 60 minutes, keep the staff meetings, change the PLCs to professional responsibility days to just loosen up a little bit what they can be used for to be more in line with how many of us are actually using them, and eliminate the 5th Wednesday just as every once in a while you can take a Wednesday off. ICSD has a proposal to change all but the 5th Wednesday to staff meetings and only do PLC on the 5th Wednesdays. So discussion points are what problems are we trying to solve and how? And I think we really early on established that having more time for professional development is important to the district. Some questions about how are staff and PLC meetings currently being used? What are the actual things we're trying to do there, and are we actually doing them? And what are the pros and cons to the way that they're being used? And really at the heart of this is how can teachers and building leaders make the best use of Wednesdays to maximize teaching and learning? And that brings us to that big picture, you know, what are our goals? What are our vision? And I'm happy to let you talk first, but I also have a whole page of notes.
What was the last part? You trailed off just a little. I didn't.
I also have a whole page of notes.
Oh, okay.
Is that like a second slide deck or?
No, it's just a
No,
list
it's
of notes.
Maybe give us 5 minutes. I just want
Absolutely.
to, there's a lot here. I just want to take a moment to sort of be like, what can we do I don't want to waste anyone's time. So just give us 5 minutes.
We're
Yeah.
good. We have time. Go take
Yep.
5 minutes.
Okay,
I'm going to use the restroom.
enjoy. GK.
No.
Please do.
Thank you very much for giving us more than 5 minutes.
Of course.
And as we chatted with each other in this room that I didn't know existed, it really becomes very clear to us very quickly. First of all, thank you for the work. And could you reshare the slide deck with us? And
Yeah, it's
we-
linked in the agenda
it-
for
it's a-
today's
it's-
meeting. Oh, you know what? I shared everything with Emily
You
and
might have to request access or something.
well, I don't have my computer now, but you will get access.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're, obviously we very impressed with the questions and we agree with you. This is the way we should focus this discussion moving forward. And it's going to be intricately tied to salary. There's no question about that. And so we just, like with the remaining 10 minutes tonight, it's probably not fruitful to just launch into it. So we'll move forward.
Do you have some like broad strokes of goals or not even to that point?
I think like we very broadly, I'm just going to speak for myself. I feel like it could be easier to have conversations around extending the professional day, not necessarily the instructional day, but there might be some wiggle room there too, because we would like to expand some instructional minutes as well. But there's transportation, there is athletics, there is like just a myriad of things. So even in the best circumstance, this would be like September 2020. Six, seven, something like that. Yeah. So, but the way you laid it out, I think is a really excellent way for us to proceed and have deeper conversations with.
That works for us. I mean, we have some broad strokes and we can kind of, when we have more time to talk more holistically about that. So agenda setting for next time, because this is just the way that I am, unapologetically, though I sound like I'm apologizing.
Yeah.
I really took a look at what do we still need to tackle to be able to potentially ratify a tentative agreement by June 12th. And our team kind of proposed what's kind of the natural order of progression on the big topics. So we were thinking that we use, recognizing that it's the end of March, that we use the month of April to, keep seeing what we can do with salary, talk significantly about the length and scope of a teacher's day. We also have a list of working conditions, things. So things related to length and scope of a teacher's day, but then also some things related to safe and supportive schools and non-traditional assignments that aren't, while they may have salary impact, they're not necessarily directly salary asks that we'd like to start talking through, so that we can use May to focus on benefits and salary and like the finishing up of those pieces. Does that sound reasonable for?
Do you think that your slide deck, I think, is good. are you thinking we would want to just go through those as questions next time, or are you
Why
thinking?
don't we start
Because I
there?
feel like that could be a long conversation.
How about we start there? If anyone brings a salary counter proposal, we figure out where the best place to put that salary counter proposal in the conversation is.
Could I just imagine, could we start with the salary proposals? I'm hoping, like,
Can we set a limit to how long we're willing to discuss it?
yes, 3 hours. But we're open to shorting that.
Open to shorting, okay. Because this is a big conversation. This is gonna take a while, and in a 4-hour session, to have a 3-hour salary discussion and this is not going to happen.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm just thinking about all the other negotiations that your team's fairly experienced with too, and of course, with not just your union. And the salary is always the toughest part. And
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've been here for 4 sessions right now, and both sides haven't really moved much on their salary. So to commit to another full session of just salary seems like not a good use of our time, and we have so many other important topics to discuss. If you guys bring a counter proposal back or another proposal, happily we'll discuss it. If we bring one back, we expect you would happily engage in that. If neither of us bring back something different that's already at the table, I don't see why we should waste time discussing something like that. But if something different comes back, yeah.
okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think if there's counter proposals either way, then we start with those. And maybe just a placeholder for like 30 minutes if there's like data that we want to share, maybe not necessarily a new counter proposal or anything, but like, hey, here's what we feel we're discovering on leapfrogging or whatever it is. And
Yeah, sorry, I would invite if there's, I know we met with some of your team and looked at data previously. If you want to do that again, reach out. We're happy to.
Okay.
Just like, because sometimes just
that might be beneficial.
comparing
actually.
this, getting clarification on what different fields might mean in our spreadsheets might be worthwhile. So,
Yeah, and it might help move.
yeah.
We don't know. I like 30 minutes tops on salary,
Unless there's a counter
unless
proposal,
there's a
right? And then,
substantial counter
right,
proposal
yeah,
that
yeah.
both sides agree is,
Yeah.
you know, worthy of more time.
And I would just say up to 30 minutes. I mean, it might be like a 10-minute discussion. Okay.
Yeah. And then picking up with the big picture planning on the length and scope of Teachers' Day. And then as we go through our April meetings, just chipping away at these other proposals in order as they're presented here. Sound good? Okay. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Good to see you. Drive safe. So it takes an hour and a half?
No, I'm just in Waverly.